Vue d'Afrique with Joël Moteba. We go to East and Central Africa and find Darubinia Africa with I Am Shakif. Madapiri gives us some life. Zochi Dika, 7 till 8 p.m. Mariamo Kumalo comes in 8 till 9. We get some useful knowledge. Kalodiscopia. 9 till 10. We take a look in Africa and beyond. Africa World Hour with Sipiso Makwetla. And we close it up with some love. The Hotlines with Shailen Dikumana. 10 till 12 p.m. on Channel Africa. Across borders, across time zones. On air, online. This is Channel Africa. Africa has a voice, and that voice is Channel Africa. It keeps you in motion, speaking, singing, questioning, rising. Wake up with Rise and Shine, 6 till 9. Peter and Asanda, as they bring you breaking news, sharp analysis, and the voices that shape the day. At mid-morning.
Rise and shine, and literally for you to rise and shine. A brand new day, Tuesday. Is it the 8th of July? I think it is actually. Yes, it is. Wow, how time flies. Second half of the year, and we're already in the second week of the month. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. You're listening to us probably via the internet, www.channelafrica.ca.co.za. I'm Peter Ndoro, and it's so good to welcome back Asanda Beda.
Yes, and it's good to be back, feeling stronger today. Good morning, and thanks for joining us. What we'll be looking at in this first hour, of course, we're together for 3 hours as a Rise and Shine team. We're looking at BRICS meeting concluding in Brazil, and the Kenyan police firing tear gas and water cannons to disperse protesters in the capital, Nairobi. Those stories and more coming up on Africa Rise and Shine. We get our news first, though. It's 6:01, and we say good morning to Mutapelo Mohapi, and then sports headlines will follow with Fikile Lingwati.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. I'm Jolani Tulo Webe. The South African chairperson of Parliament's Portfolio Police Committee, Ian Cameron, says President Cyril Ramaphosa should urgently act to protect the credibility of the police service. This follows allegations of corruption involving high-ranking police officers. There are also allegations that Police Minister Senzo Mchunu has affiliations with an individual with criminal links. The allegations were made by KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi during a media briefing conference at Parliament. Cameron called on Ramaphosa to act urgently.
As the head of state, the President has a responsibility to implement an intensive investigation into the corruption allegations at SAPS to protect and promote the credibility of the service. The committee welcomes, and this is the Police Committee, the assurance of the President in his latest press release to give the matter due regard upon his return from Brazil, but has urged that this matter be priority number one.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has accorded former Deputy President David Mabuza with a state funeral, Category 2, which will be held on Saturday in the Mpumalanga province. The former president passed away last Thursday at the age of 64 after a short illness at a Johannesburg hospital. Presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya says President Ramaphosa has ordered that the national flag be flown at half-mast until the evening of the funeral as part of the mourning period.
In terms of the state official and provincial official funeral policy manual of the presidency, the state funeral category 2 is reserved for the Deputy President of the Republic, an acting president, and former Deputy President. The state funeral category 2 is conducted with prescribed military ceremonial honors.
Kenya protesters refused to back down as nationwide demonstrations intensified. Kenyan police opened fire on a charging crowd of protesters in the capital Nairobi yesterday. They also used tear gas and blocked the roads to stop protesters from getting to the city centre. Demonstrations were due to be held across Kenya to mark the anniversary of pro-democracy unrest in 1990. The BBC's Joel Kiriungi has the details.
Police said it was their constitutional duty to protect lives and property while maintaining public order. Recent protests have turned violent, with armed groups looting and attacking demonstrators. Today's protests mark the 35th anniversary of the historic 7th of July demonstrations, which were a turning point in the struggle for multi-party democracy in Kenya.
The Trump administration has deported to South Sudan 8 migrants who had been held for more than a month by the U.S. at a military base in Djibouti. The Department of Homeland Security said the migrants lost a last-ditch effort to help their transfer to the politically unstable country. The men had been held in U.S. custody in Djibouti since a federal judge in Boston in May blocked the Trump administration from immediately moving them to South Sudan over due process concerns. The 8 men, who, according to their lawyers, are from Cuba, Mexico, Myanmar, Sudan and Vietnam, had argued their deportations to South Sudan would violate the U.S. Constitution, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. Musical icon Angelique Kidjo says the decision to award her a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame is an important signal. Last week, the 64-year-old became the first black African performer to be given the honor. Kidjo, who comes from the West African country of Benin and has 5 Grammy Awards, was among the 35 names announced as part of the Walk of Fame's class of 2026 list. Speaking to the BBC, Kidjo said the world needs to see talent no matter its background.
I hope that this is going to open the door for other African artists or artists of any background, basically, to have their place and to be recognized for what they do for the human being that we are, all of us, without the language you speak, the skin color you have, wherever you come from. We need to be able to recognize people's excellencies no matter where they come from.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Webe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Now, sports headline, Banyana kicked off their WAFCON title defense with victory against Ghana. And former multiple world champion Ricky Hatton has announced his return to boxing. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Thanks there to Jolane and Fikile back in 6:30. And just after those news headlines, we'll get the full update from sports from Fikile. After the news every day on Africa Rise and Shine, we take a look at some stories making headlines in and around our continent. Our team of researchers, our writers and reporters bring you a concise roundup of what's happened, usually between yesterday and today, and what we can look at in terms of what we will be following up in the news. And today we start with leaders of the BRICS group of developing nations concluding their summit in Rio de Janeiro on Monday by demanding that wealthy countries take responsibility for financing climate mitigation efforts in the global south. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has more from Rio.
BRICS also dealt with a variety of issues, security matters, and on security matters, we collectively condemned the attack on countries such as Iran, which was done unilaterally, and continued to call for a ceasefire in Gaza so that the slaughter and the genocide of the Palestinians should be stopped. We also took time to look at what is happening in Sudan, the catastrophe that is unfolding there with people becoming displaced and many people dying. So that too was dealt with, and BRICS insisted that when it comes to our continent, African conflicts must be resolved through African solutions.
Meanwhile, in Kenya, police used tear gas and water cannon to break up protests in Nairobi on Monday. Demonstrators had gathered there to mark the 35th anniversary of the country's pro-democracy movement. Zachary Gulman has the details for us.
A Reuters reporter witnessed police open fire on a crowd of advancing protesters. One man was subsequently seen motionless on the road with a bloody wound. A police spokesperson did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The clashes marked the 35th anniversary of pro-democracy rallies known as Saba Saba, Swahili for 7-7, commemorating July 7, 1990, that called for a shift to multi-party democracy. Authorities locked down major roads and restricted vehicle traffic, leaving normally bustling streets deserted except for determined demonstrators on foot. Most schools and at least one shopping mall remained closed in anticipation of unrest. This year's rally follows a wave of youth-led protests in June, which began over tax hikes, but quickly widened to include anger over corruption, police violence, and the mysterious disappearances of government critics.
Let's go to Somalia now, where in Beda, low vaccination rates and widespread malnutrition are putting young lives at risk. At a local clinic, a health worker administers vaccine drops to a crying baby as the mother looks on. Alice Rizzo reports.
Many of the more than 60 people who visit this Somali health centre are seeking vaccination. That's according to Dr. Marianne Mohammed, who says she fears that if vaccine supplies run low, then there's a serious risk of disease outbreaks. And she has good reason to be concerned. The facility, the Bulo Jadid Health Centre in Baidoa, is supported by Save the Children and USAID. The latter has been effectively shut down after US President Donald Trump's administration froze and then cut back billions of dollars in foreign aid. Mohammed says many of those who are vaccinated here come from displacement camps and remote areas. She worries that if people are not immunized, diseases such as whooping cough and polio will spread.
Meanwhile, in Sudan's war-torn city of El Fasher, humanitarian workers there are warning of catastrophic shortages of food and clean water. The United Nations is saying that ongoing violence is making aid delivery nearly impossible. Here's the UN spokesperson, Stefan Dujarric.
Most water infrastructure in the area has either been destroyed or rendered non-functional due to the lack of maintenance or fuel to run the generators. A recent assessment by our humanitarian partners, together with local authorities, found that 38% of children under the age of 5 in El Fasher are suffering from acute malnutrition, including 11% with severe acute malnutrition. The breakdown of water and sanitation services, combined with low vaccination coverage, has sharply increased the risk of disease outbreaks.
In South Sudan, the World Food Programme, or the WFP, has launched emergency airdrops of food aid to thousands in Upper Nile State as ongoing conflict since March pushes communities closer to famine.
These distributions mark WFP's first access in over 4 months to deliver much-needed food and nutrition assistance to more than 40,000 people facing catastrophic hunger in the most remote parts of Nasir and Oolong counties in the state. These areas are only accessible by air. More than 1 million people across Upper Nile are estimated to be facing acute hunger, including over 30,000 people who are already experiencing catastrophic levels of hunger, which is the highest level of food insecurity in our integrated food security phase classification scale. This figure has tripled since the armed conflict flared in March, triggering a mass displacement, including across the border into Ethiopia, where WFP is already providing food aid to around 50,000 people who fled from Upper Nile State due to the conditions there.
That's how we come to the end of today's edition of the Africa Roundup.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week.
Stella Longwe, Pamalonje.
Palitu sokoma pano pamalonje. Kumvera nyimbo za mu Africa, kusangalala, kupeza moyo. Akuti kumva moyo kuti kuyenda bwino pano pamalonje. Ndiyetu apa tili ndikatswiri oyimba ameneyu ndikatswiri wa dziko la Malawi amene akukhala mdziko la South Africa, ndipo amayimba amene akuti ndi Big Nick Malawi. Yatuzani kuti kodi moyo wanu woyimba ukuyenda bwanji mu Johannesburg?
Moyo woyimba ukuyenda bwinobwino kwambiri. Chiliyonse chikutheka ndithu bwinobwino.
Hayi aziboneka chiliyonse chikutheka mofa magrasi anu apa mwaka. Akuti kumenya yonse hayi ziboneka zoti ayizikutheka ndithu mu Johannesburg.
Malonje panthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo. Lowiruka ndi Stella Longwe.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
14 minutes past 6 Central African time. Good morning. If you've just joined us, this is Africa Rise and Shine. Do get in touch with us on our social media platforms. At Channel Africa 1 is our handle across those different networks. U.S. President Donald Trump says countries that align themselves with the anti-American policies of the BRICS group will be charged an additional 10% tariff in trade with America. Trump also earlier announced that tariff letters with various countries would be delivered starting today. The BRICS Leaders Summit, currently underway in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, earlier released a declaration voicing serious concerns about the rise of unilateral tariff and non-tariff measures which distort trade, while condemning the recent military strikes against the Islamic Republic of Iran. Sherwin Bryce Peace also reports on Trump's latest announcement on possible new bilateral trade deals with the United States and a further extension on the imposition of his reciprocal tariff regime.
Trump on Truth Social warned that any country aligning itself with BRICS would be charged an additional 10% trade tariff and that there would be no exceptions to that policy. The BRICS group, which includes South Africa, India, Russia and China, is currently holding a leaders' summit in Brazil and seeks to prioritize and develop relations between the global South as a counterpoint to Western dominance. The BRICS declaration, issued on Sunday, pushed back against unilateral tariff measures that were inconsistent with World Trade Organization rules, further condemned the imposition of unilateral coercive measures that were contrary to international law, while condemning the recent military strikes targeting Iran's nuclear facilities. Trump responded on Truth Social with this post, warning that any country that aligned with the anti-American policies of BRICS would be charged an additional 10% tariff and that there would be no exceptions to that policy. He did not elaborate on which BRICS policies or positions he was referring to. This is how China's foreign ministry spokesperson Mao Ning responded.
With regard to the imposition of tariffs, China has repeatedly stated its position that there are no winners in trade wars and tariff wars, and that protectionism has no way out. I've just shared our view on the BRICS mechanism. We believe that BRICS is a positive force in the international community. Its cooperation is open and inclusive, and not targeted at any particular country. As for tariffs, we have consistently opposed tariff wars and trade wars. We are against using tariffs as a tool for coercion and pressure. Arbitrarily imposing tariffs does not serve the interests of any party.
Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov also weighed in.
We have indeed seen such statements by President Trump, but it is very important to note here that the uniqueness of a group like BRICS is that it is a group of countries that share common approaches and a common worldview on how to cooperate based on their own interest. And this cooperation within BRICS has never been and will never be directed against any third countries.
President Trump also posted that tariff letters and possibly deals would be delivered to countries starting Monday. A previously announced 90-day pause in tariff rates that were announced in April, including a 31% rate on South African exports to the United States, was due to expire on Wednesday, July 9th. But the administration has since indicated that those rates would kick in only on August 1st in the absence of a trade deal, providing a 3-week reprieve to nations to strike a deal.
Sending letters out on Monday having to do with the trade deals. Could be 12, maybe 15. You know, Secretary of Commerce right here. And I guess, Howard, I would say it could be maybe as many as 15 or so. And they'll be going out on Monday, and some will go out on Tuesday and Wednesday, and and we've made deals also, so we're going to have a combination of letters, and some deals have been made.
Further clarification from his Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick.
Tariffs go into effect August 1st, but the
president is setting the rates and the deals right now.
South Africa earlier this month asked for more time to negotiate a trade deal with the United States before a higher tariff regime kicked in. A July 1st statement from the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition said South Africa was seeking, through a new proposed framework deal, to have some key export products exempted from tariffs, including autos and auto parts, steel and aluminium, while offering to purchase liquefied natural gas from the United States in exchange. The deal was first presented to the United States during President Cyril Ramaphosa's visit to the White House in May. I'm Sherman Rice-Pease in New York.
In South Africa, a senior judicial figure is facing serious allegations of misconduct. Judge President Selby Mbenenge, who heads the High Court in the country's Eastern Cape province, has denied claims of sexual harassment made by a former secretary, Andiswa Mengo. Whilst admitting that he was interested in her romantically, Mbenenge strongly denied ever sending inappropriate images or exposing himself to her, calling the accusations a deliberate attempt to damage his reputation. He took to the stand for the first time before the country's Judicial Conduct Tribunal, which is investigating the alleged harassment said to have occurred between mid-2021 and late 2022. Kani Mapanga has more for us.
Judge President Selby Mbenenge has taken the stand and seemingly justified his interest in relating to Judge's secretary Andiswa Mengo, stating that there was nothing wrong with it.
Let me just mention it in passing. I know of judges who married their secretaries in this country. Heavens did not fall.
Well, the answer will be two wrongs don't make a right.
I don't believe that there was anything wrong.
The crucial allegations that the top judge faces that are in dispute is that he allegedly solicited an act of a sexual nature from Mengo and that he allegedly sent her an explicit image. Mbenenge passionately refutes these allegations.
I look at it as a campaign to shame me. It is lies. It never happened. The complainant knows, much as I do, that it never took place.
As Mbenenge further delved into the allegations of the 14th and the 15th of November 2022, he went into great detail of gaps that he expected should have been investigated extensively prior to persisting with the allegations before the tribunal, such as his car tracker report and the register of the court that showed that Mengo left before former Judge's secretary Zinhle Nqayi. Mbenenge seemingly had further criticism for evidence leader, Advocate Salome Skeepers, in her role in this inquisitorial body.
And the context here, Chairperson, is to say, evidence leader, you are investigating in an investigative process. You are not the complainant's lawyer. You are not the prosecutor, such as in a criminal case. It is incumbent on you to investigate in the true sense of the word, to interview people so that when the time comes for this tribunal to hear evidence, we know who is going to say what. This notion about an evidence leader saying, well, here are the complainant's witnesses, the rest you will see for yourself, is not good.
The tribunal continues with the top judge on the stand. Kani Mapanga, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Human rights organization African Diaspora Network is considering pressing criminal charges against Operation Dudula, a South African civic group campaigning to block foreign nationals from accessing healthcare services. Operation Dudula argues that treating non-citizens is placing a strain on the nation's resources. Channel Africa's Tutongobeni reports.
Operation Dudula has been at the forefront of a campaign mobilizing against foreign nationals accessing health facilities in the country. The organization's president, Zandile Dabula, says their campaign is a response to an invitation by community members who have complained that they are unable to access medication at health facilities.
So the reason why we went is that we were invited by communities to say that, they're battling when it comes to receiving medication. By the time they get to the doctors or nurses, they are told that there's no medication. Yet they have been seeing foreign nationals coming to the clinics way earlier than them and getting medication. So we thought we should intervene because, we're dealing with people who come to the country illegally and they don't respect the laws of this country. And we must use our tax money as South Africans to accommodate criminals. It's not fair.
Dabula says they recently learned that illegal foreign nationals are stocking up medication for business.
Now, we've also seen that it was all over media mainstream. These people are on business. Now, they collect medication in our public facilities and they go sell them at home. There was a bus that was stopped and searched. It was a bus going to Zimbabwe. And the police found medication, lots of medication, not just medication for one person. So that on its own was evident that these people are running businesses. They collect medication from South Africa and they sell it in their country.
There's been mixed reactions to the civic movement's actions, with the human rights group African Diaspora Network condemning this campaign and labeling Operation Dudula's campaign unlawful. Chairperson of the African Diaspora Network, Dr. Vusumuzi Sibanda, says Dudula is behaving like a group of thugs.
Well, look, Operation Dudula is conducting itself exactly like, of people that are thugs in a way, because one, they're a vigilante group that has given themselves the authority of law enforcement agents, stopping people, preventing people from receiving health care, unlawfully so. And of course, because nobody is really taking them to account, because they should have been arrested already, for intimidation, preventing people to do their own business and causing chaos and social disorder.
In response to the claim that illegal foreign nationals are stocking up medication at South African facilities to go and sell them in their home countries, Sibanda says it doesn't make sense.
They've never been outside South Africa, and how do they know that people go and sell medication outside South Africa? Who buys medication? The bulk of these countries, they also have got, who would buy them? For what purposes? It's nonsensical. What they're saying is hogwash. It's completely senseless.
Sibanda says they're considering laying criminal charges against the leader of Operation Dudula.
Obviously, we're actually talking about, engaging the authorities, but more especially, to open criminal charges, of preventing people to access, because that is social disorder, that is intimidation, what we have seen them doing. So I think at this particular stage, we would want to see exactly what's going to happen if criminal, charges are preferred, against the leader, because look, at the end of the day, these are the people that are inciting other people to violence. Because this leads to, the xenophobic attacks that we have seen. If those foreigners decide that some of them want to protect their rights and fight back, then what breaks is social disorder. So we cannot allow a situation where the authorities are sitting back, and watching this kind of, a disorder taking, root.
Operation Dudula has called on government to prioritize South Africans when it comes to accessing health facilities, while rights groups have labeled Dudula's actions as unconstitutional. For Channel Africa News, I am Tutongo Bene in Johannesburg.
And still in South Africa, the country's police minister, Senzo Mchunu, says that he's still applying his mind on the allegations that have been leveled against him by the provincial police commissioner of KwaZulu-Natal, Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. The police in KwaZulu-Natal's head alleged that Minister Mchunu and Deputy National Police Commissioner for Crime Detection, Shadrack Sibia, interfered in the work of the police task team that was investigating political killings in his province. He accused the minister of disbanding it. Political parties are now calling on President Cyril Ramaphosa to act swiftly on the matter, whilst others have called on the minister to step down. Meanwhile, a letter has since been written to the National Assembly Speaker, Thoko Didiza, for an urgent debate over the matter. Ntebo Mokgobo has more.
General Mkhwanazi's startling revelations of organized criminal syndicates infiltrating the country's police service with the aid of politicians, prosecutors and judges, among others, have sent shockwaves to both legislators and South Africans in general. And Police Minister Senzo Mchunu, who is also accused of being complicit in these criminal activities, has vowed to respond soon.
Well, we have become aware of what General Mkhwanazi said we have been saying. I didn't have time to look at TV, but there are those statements that he has made. We will, in good time, apply our mind to those kind of statements.
At the same time, Police Portfolio Committee Chairperson Ian Cameron has written to the Speaker of the National Assembly, Tokoti Diza, to request an urgent debate following the allegations made.
It is a massive cause for concern. We have a media briefing at Parliament tomorrow in general in the peace and security cluster, where obviously we will deal with a lot of it, but we have no choice but to get everyone together and ask certain questions. The South African Police Service management was rocked by very senior arrests over the last few weeks, and at the moment it feels like a lot of the leftover credibility, the small amount that there was, is being torn to pieces.
Some political parties have since called for an urgent intervention from President Cyril Ramaphosa. MK Party MP David Skosana says this warrants the president's intervention.
As MK Party, I'm calling upon the president to act swiftly and decisively on this matter. It's very imperative that the minister, because I'm saying to you now, that as a portfolio committee, we were misled by the minister, or even not even to give us reason to make the disbandment of this critical trustee. As the General Mkwanazi was saying here, it's a cause for concern.
The EFF lauded Mkwanazi for exposing the ring of corruption in the criminal justice system, as party spokesperson Nautambo explains.
The EFF salutes Mkwanazi for his bravery in standing up to this criminal cabal. His principled stance and commitment to the rule of law are commendable, especially in the face of a deliberate political smear campaign designed to undermine his leadership and isolate him within SAPS. In response to the revelations, the EFF has demanded that the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Police, Ian Cameron, convene an urgent physical portfolio committee sitting for a briefing from the Minister of Police regarding the matters raised by Commissioner Mkwanazi.
Shaking her head in disbelief, Action SA's Darrelyn James says it's shocking to the court to hear allegations of corruption from the highest echelon of the police services.
We've seen the cover-ups when it comes to police station brigadiers, what not more right now when you have generals embroiled in all of this. We can definitely not leave it to anyone in SAPS to investigate this. This needs a response from Parliament, and this needs a response from South Africans. And I'm going to leave it there. It is not for us right now to sort of say whether these allegations are true, but where there's smoke, I can tell you there's fire.
For its part, the UDM has called on the minister to resign amidst these allegations, as party deputy president Ngabe Muzi Kwankwa explains.
We're hoping or calling on the minister to do us a favor. He can brief us fine, but step aside and allow due process to follow the investigation to unfold. If he doesn't do that, the president will have to act, probably giving a precautionary suspension so that the investigation can be able to unfold.
Meanwhile, in a written response to the SABC News, the ANC says the allegations are of great concern, insisting that the president must get to the bottom of it. I am Tebo Mokobe in Johannesburg.
Let's check in with news headlines with Jolani Tulongwepe. It's 6:31 Central African Time.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa says allegations by KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Police Commissioner Ndandla Mkhwanazi against SAPS members and Police Minister Senzo Mchunu will be speedily addressed following a thorough probe. Among others, Mkhwanazi told journalists that Police Minister Mchunu had associations with dubious characters and that high-ranking police officers were corrupt. At least 11 people have been killed during anti-government protests in Kenya and 567 arrested. Dr. Aaron Sikuku, a medic at Eagle Nursing Home on the outskirts of Nairobi, said the bodies of 2 people who died of gunshot wounds had been brought to the facility. And finally, Russia's transport minister has been found dead in his car on the outskirts of Moscow, hours after it was announced he's been dismissed. I will have details on these and other stories at 7 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Right, let's get our first sports updates for the morning. And Figile Lingwati is with us. And there's lots of football being played both in Europe and across the continent. Let's find out what's on Figile's menu. Good morning, Figile.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning, guys. We begin with football news ongoing in Morocco. Defending Women's Africa Cup of Nations champions South Africa have shown fine form in the first match of their title defense to beat Ghana 2-0 in the opening Group C match in Oujda in Morocco. Both goals were scored in the first half, with midfielder Linda Motlalo and striker Jermaine Siebosenwe finding the back of the net. It was a positive start to the WAFCON tournament for Desiree Ellis' team, who had the lion's share of possession, but fewer shots on target. Ghana won 3 of the previous 5 matches played between these two sides, while 2 were draws. Banyana's next match is on Friday evening against Tanzania at the same venue. And Confederation of African Football CAF General Secretary Veron Musengo Omba will continue in his role after he was cleared of any wrongdoing by the Joint Investigation Committee report into the allegations of governance non-compliance within the CAF Secretariat. This was confirmed by CAF President Patrice Motsepe during a press conference held after the CAF Executive Committee meeting in Rabat, Morocco this past weekend. CAF's Audit and Compliance Committee had claimed that there had been unauthorized interference from Musengo Omba regarding a report into his conduct because he had appointed the external auditor. However, Motsepe said they are relieved that this matter has been put to bed.
They found that there was no behavior or conduct that amounted either to money having been stolen, as some people were speculating outside, which is false. The report didn't say anything. In fact, even the allegations, there were issues that were raised there. And the conclusion of the Joint Investigation Committee was they found nothing that was improper. They found nothing had been done that was wrong.
Motsepe says lessons have been learned from this investigation, and going forward, they will ensure that they shut down any weaknesses or loopholes in governance areas within CAF.
Also specifically identify areas of weaknesses in governments or where we can improve, and they have given us specific proposals. We did excellent work on governance when I became president, but I think we were excessively aggressive in the beginning because the report of PricewaterhouseCoopers made certain recommendations. And what we've asked Judge Tamasep to do, and we will be in touch with PricewaterhouseCoopers, is to make sure that those areas where there's been good work in governance, which is good, but there are some areas where we can even do better.
Let's end with boxing news. Former multiple world champion Ricky Hatton has announced his return to boxing. Hatton, who turns 47 in October, will fight the United Arab Emirates' Asa Al-Dar in a middleweight bout on the 2nd of December in Dubai. Organizers say the contest will be a professional bout, but it is unclear if it will be fully sanctioned or if it will have conditions like Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul, where there were shorter rounds and a limit on number of rounds. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Lingwadi.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter? Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard? Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126. And we will call you back so you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age. I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So that's who I am, you know.
It's not just talk. It's your chance to air your views. Share your opinion. Engage with the community that values your perspective. Follow us on our social media. Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za and get ready to share your views on Channel Africa, the African perspective. Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine, weekdays 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
Let's check in with the world of business now for our first date on Rise and Shine on this 8th of July. We say good morning to Thabiso Lehuku.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. The South African Trade Ministry spokesperson, Camille Ali, says South Africa is not anti-American and still wants to negotiate a trade deal with the United States. This after US President Donald Trump threatened an extra 10% tariff on countries aligned with the BRICS grouping. Trump accused the BRICS of developing nations of which South Africa is a member of anti-American policies yesterday as BRICS leaders were holding a summit in Brazil. South Africa has been trying to negotiate a trade deal with the Trump's administration since May, when Trump hosted President Cyril Ramaphosa for talks in the White House. The South African Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Dean McPherson, has officially handed over a state-owned land to the Nkandla local municipality in northern KwaZulu-Natal province. McPherson was accompanied by Premier Thami Ntuli and other provincial officials. The land is earmarked for economic development and community upliftment. McPherson says he is confident that the land will be used to develop local residents, especially small businesses.
So when it was brought to my attention, we looked at it and it absolutely fits our model of using public assets for public good, but also seeing that located in rural municipalities and in rural areas like we are here in Nkandla today. So our view is that we have now given the permission to the municipality to take occupation of the land. At the same time, we are facilitating the full transfer to the municipality, and they will then begin in earnest the rezoning and planning purposes for a private developer then to come in here and build a shopping centre that will create jobs.
Nigeria's Data Protection Agency has fined MultiChoice Nigeria Limited, Africa's biggest pay television company, $501,340 for violating the country's data protection law. MultiChoice, which operates pay TV services, DSTV and GeoTV in Nigeria, has faced legal and regulatory hurdles in the past 2 years from authorities regarding conscientious price hikes and tax disagreements. Chanduko Lekeke reports.
MultiChoice could not be reached immediately for comment. Head of Legal at the Nigeria Data Protection Commission and DPC, Babatunde Bamigboye, says the penalty follows an investigation initiated a year ago, prompted by suspected breaches of subscribers' privacy rights and illegal cross-border transfer of personal data. Bamigboye further says the depth of data processing by MultiChoice is patently intrusive, unfair and unnecessary, affecting not only subscribers but also their associates.
Algeria's state oil and gas company Sonatrach and Italy's Eni have signed a production sharing contract to explore and develop hydrocarbons. Total investments for exploration and development work in the so-called Zamul Al-Kabar contractual parameter are estimated at $1.35 billion. The work schedule relating to this hydrocarbon contract includes recourse to innovative technological processes, integrating the latest digital solutions pertaining to operating the use of new technologies of production optimization and reserves recovery. Traders are said to make about $1.4 billion in paper profits from the short positions in Tesla shares on Monday, after CEO Elon Musk's plans to launch a new U.S. political party heightened concerns about his commitment to the company's future. The company's shares slumped 7.5% in early trading after Musk's political move, which followed an open feud with Donald Trump over U.S. president's tax cut and spending bill. According to data analytic firm Ortex, at a price of $296, investors betting against EV makers are on track to make about $1.4 billion in profits. The dollar in Nigeria will cost you 1,000 naira 5.29. Botswana 13.13. Kenya 128 shilling 4.55, and Zambia 24 kwacha 19. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar will cost you 5 real 44. Russia, 78 rubles 52. India, 85 rupees 78. China, 7 yuan 17. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 17 rand 74 cents. $1 is trading at 73 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Commodities markets, gold $3,331, platinum $1,370 per ounce, Brent crude oil is at $69.36 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hugo.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
So older people. Did you know that the G20, a group of the world's largest economies, doesn't work in isolation? It partners closely with major global institutions such as the United Nations, the UN, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, the World Bank and the World Trade Organization, the WTO, and others like the International Labour Organization, the ILO, and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. These partnerships often help the G20 tackle global challenges from economic stability and job creation to development, trade, and poverty reduction. And that's our G20 fact for the day.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
It's 6:45 Central African time. Let's look at this story now. The chairperson of the Civil 20 or C20 under the G20, Thulani Chefuta, says that in the midst of a challenging geopolitical climate and increasing trade uncertainty, the C20 is pushing for a people-centered development agenda that prioritizes inclusive economic transformation over economic dominance. Chefuta was speaking at a C20 media briefing held in Pretoria, South Africa. The meeting took place under the theme Solidarity, Equality and Sustainability. Channel Africa's business reporter Innocent Samusa has more.
As South Africa gears up to host the G20 Leaders Summit later this year, the C20, one of the official G20 engagement groups representing civil society across various sectors, briefed the media on the country's preparations and priorities on the road to the summit. The chairperson of the C20, Thulani Chefuta, led the briefing.
We take pride in the fact that from the beginning of our work in December 2024, to date, we have been able to register more than 1,900 civil society organizations that have declared interest in participating in the C20 structures and processes. These organizations are drawn from South African civil society, from the African continent, and the rest of the world, as in the countries that are member countries of G20. We have taken a conscious decision of making this as the first South African G20 to be less about South Africa, but more about Africa as a whole.
Chefuta says the C20 advocates for a people-centered development agenda that prioritizes inclusive economic transformation.
At the very least, the volatile geopolitical developments reflect the vulnerabilities of our economies to external shocks, almost instantly finding expression on the daily lives and experiences of the people. And the point we're driving here is that on the slightest provocation of a conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and we cannot get fertilizer, our agricultural sector is affected, and you know the knock-on effect on the food prices.
And this is a call for the C20 regarding issues of just energy and climate change.
And the call we are making as civil society is that we tend to make a one-sided call for a just transition focused on energy. Yes, the energy transition must be just. The same way as the demographic transition must be just. The same way as the technological transition must be just. And climate change. The G20 Presidency of the Republic of South Africa is committed to promote a people-centered, development-oriented G20 that fosters inclusive economic transformation rather than economic dominance by the few over the majority.
As the countdown to the G20 Leaders Summit continues, the C20 is making it clear that civil society voices must be central in shaping policies that drive inclusive growth and climate justice. For Channel Africa News, I am Innocent Samosa.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
Now, a major regional gathering on infrastructure and mobility kicked off on Monday in Pretoria, South Africa. The Southern African Transport Conference brings together policymakers, researchers, and industry experts to explore how transport can drive economic growth across the region. And over the 3 days of the conference, delegates will discuss the cost of poor transport systems on national economies, how strategic investments in roads, rail, and ports could improve trade and logistics across Southern Africa. Sisi Sehalo reports from the opening day of the conference.
South Africa's Minister of Transport, Barbara Kresi, opened the 45th annual conference. She said the aim and objectives of the conference are aligned to the strategic priorities of his government, which is to promote inclusive economic growth and create jobs, to maintain and optimize the social wage, and also to build a capable and ethical state. She affirmed that a functional transport system is vital and that they are continually improving their transport system.
In addition to the work we're doing in rail, we're also trying to upgrade the access network of airports. One of the things we've seen is the dramatic revival of aviation after the COVID pandemic. And we are seeing that there's increasing appetite for air transport, but there's also increasing appetite for air freight. At the moment, we're moving about 300,000 tons of air freight a year. We think that there's appetite to move 1.2 million tons. In that regard, we've allocated 21 billion over the next 3 years to AXA.
One of the issues being discussed in the conference is the public transport system, which many people in Southern Africa rely on. Transport engineer from the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research in South Africa, Namatirai Cheure, says the biggest challenge is the transport provision, which in turn affects accessibility. There's a need for more research for proper implementation in order to ensure good, safe, affordable and equitable public transport system, she adds.
Firstly, the issue of funding. With proper funding, I think integration is very important. The public transport system should be integrated such that the users maybe can just use one card to tap, from one mode to another. Also, the issue of scheduling to make sure that the public transport system comes maybe, for example, during the peak hour, within a few minutes, and even off peak, also to just be accessible. And also making sure that we have intelligent transport systems, the ITS component of public transport, and also making sure that it's affordable for everyone, because currently, especially for the low income group, public transport system is very expensive for them, and they are using a lot of their money from their household income on transport only. So there is need to improve on that.
Chairman of the conference, Dr. Mateta Mokonyama, says in their 43 years of existence, there's been wealth of information at hand, reference documents, case studies, new knowledge, and many more. He shares what this year's conference will cover.
In the 4 days of the conference, we cover all modes of transport, land, air, water, and within land, rail, road, public transport, non-motorized transport. So all modes of transport are covered. Maritime is one of the interesting sessions because it's underexplored. It's an underexplored area. Most of the trade, 80% of trade uses maritime infrastructure, but the opportunities in maritime are underexplored. Small businesses that want to get involved in the maritime value chain, it would be good to participate. Have a look at the information generated from such sessions. On Thursday, both AU and EU are partnering to unpack some of the opportunities available across the continent, infrastructure projects, how to get involved. So it'd be one session to look out for.
The conference also emphasized the importance of collaboration, as they say the transport system is a complex portfolio. For Channel Africa, I'm Sisi Sekhalo in Pretoria, South Africa.
South Africa is the second greatest exporter of citrus in the world after Spain, with another record year on the cards. An estimated 171 million cartons is expected to be shipped globally. But there are challenges, and it's appealing to government to assist in curbing international trade barriers that prevent it from reaching its full growth potential. Andile Mbanjwa reports.
Citrus is South Africa's largest agricultural export industry, supporting over 140,000 jobs on farms and contributing 34 billion rand in foreign revenue per season. The industry is confident that it can export over 260 million cartons of 15 kilograms each by 2032. But to do this, support is critical to ensure market access. The United States tariff crisis causes anxiety, and access to new markets will become increasingly important in future. The Citrus Growers Association of Southern Africa CEO Dr. Buchoko Nchabele says discussions are underway with countries within BRICS as well as Japan, South Korea and Saudi Arabia.
One of the key issues that we would like government to focus on for ahead of the budget vote is the issue of market access. One of the things that has enabled the citrus industry to grow has been accessing new markets. And with the advent of Trump tariffs, we need to find new markets, but also to ensure that the anticipated growth of this industry, which we estimate would make us export 260 million cartons by 2032, requires new markets. And that is why we feel that it is opportune that government focuses on finding new markets for South African fresh produce, including citrus.
The industry has welcomed the pronouncements by the Minister of Agriculture, John Steenhuisen, regarding a greater focus on biosecurity. This, as one of the toughest pressure points, is with its biggest market, the European Union. Limitations on exports of citrus black spot or CBS and false codling mott or FCM has hampered efforts to expand. Nchabele says they will continue to working closely with the Department of Agriculture and the Department of International Relations and Cooperation to address what he calls restrictions on international markets.
We face a lot of pressure in terms of what we consider unscientific and unjustified trade barriers of a phytosanitary nature with regards to CBS and FCM control. This matter is a subject of a dispute between South Africa and the EU at the WTO. A speedy resolution of this matter would ensure that we have improved access, but also reduce the burden of costs on citrus producers in South Africa.
The citrus export season is now at its peak and will end in October. Limpopo is the biggest production area, followed by the Eastern Cape and Western Cape. This report was compiled by Mariska Botha. I am Andile Mbanjwa in Cape Town.
Portfolio manager at Rand Swiss, South Africa's securities broker firm, Gary Boyson, says the increase in oil production is positive for inflation. This as OPEC announced the decision to increase oil output by 548,000 barrels per day in August. According to a statement on the OPEC website, the decision was made after the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries and their allies, a group known as OPEC Plus, reviewed global market market conditions and outlooks. Nothando Makutulela reports.
On Monday morning, Brent crude futures fell 67 cents following the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries and their allies' agreement on Saturday to raise production in August. This decision will further accelerate output since oil prices jumped and then retreated following Israeli and U.S. attacks on Iran. The increase in August represents monthly increases of 411,000 barrels approved by OPEC Plus for May, June, and July. Gary Boyson, Portfolio Manager at Rand Swiss.
I suppose an oversupply in the market, if we do have higher growth, and obviously there is, as we said, a lot of uncertainty around tariffs, and that feeds into your expectation around global growth. But if you're just looking at the supply side of the equation, if we are bringing on a lot more supply into the market, that should be positive for inflation overall. Right now, OPEC Plus did surprise the market with a greater than expected production increase.
Boyson says there hasn't been much reaction to oil prices from the markets. However, these news will boost consumer sentiment globally. On Monday, Brent crude oil fell from $75 to $68 a barrel. This is due to subsiding tensions between Israel and Iran.
It is interesting to note that Saudi Arabia is doing a lot of the heavy lifting on this. So while Arab Light, which is what Saudi Arabia sells, is at 4-month highs, they are actively increasing their output. So there's a very real possibility that the world is going to be flooded with cheap oil. And that's fantastic. It'll improve our consumer sentiment. It's going to reduce fuel and logistics costs. It's going to keep our inflation under control. That could potentially mean that the South African Reserve Bank has a little bit more scope to cut interest rate. I think is good news for everyone.
Nothando Makutulela, SABC News, Johannesburg.
It's o'clock Central African time, Asanda.
7 o'clock.
Is it 7?
Fast forwarding us.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Welcome to the second hour of Rise and Shine if you've just joined us. Well, we are Channel Africa coming to you live from our Johannesburg studios in South Africa. My name is Asanda Beda.
In my defense, it is 8 o'clock somewhere.
Yes, somewhere.
In Nairobi, it's 8 o'clock. I'm Peter Ndoro. Thanks so much indeed for this, joining us for the second hour of the program, and we're looking at quite a number of things this hour, right?
Yeah, we're going to be looking at Kenya protest. Well, as you said, it's Nairobi time.
There you go.
So we'll start there. The Sabasaba protest across Kenya there, and we'll also be looking at the police parliament's chairperson of the police committee in South Africa, Ian Cameron, calling for a special commission to be established to investigate criminal activities among members of the country's police.
All of that and more still to come right here on Rise and Shine. But first, here's your news with Jwalani Tulo-Ngwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa says allegations by KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Police Commissioner Ndlandla Mkhwanazi against SAPS members and Police Minister Senzo Mchunu will be speedily addressed following a thorough probe. Among others, Mkhwanazi told journalists that Police Minister Senzo Mchunu had associations with dubious characters and that high-ranking police officers were corrupt. He had also opened a criminal case against Mchunu for allegedly derailing investigations into political killings. Ramaphosa addressed the media in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, following the wrapping up of the 17th BRICS Leaders Summit.
Obviously, it is a matter that I will be dealing with when I get home. I will need to look at it more closely and have a thoroughgoing discussion with a number of people, and thereafter there will be a clear way forward. This is not a matter that we should not give attention to. It is a serious matter. It has to do with the security of our people, but it also has to do with our adherence to the rule of law. The police play a critical role in enhancing the rule of law, the safety of South Africans, and that those who have done wrong should be dealt with thoroughly in terms of our constitution and our laws.
Still in South Africa, President Ramaphosa has accorded former Deputy President David Mabuza with a state funeral category 2, which will be held on Saturday in the Mpumalanga province. The former president passed away last Thursday at the age of 64 after a short illness at a Johannesburg hospital. Presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya says President Ramaphosa has ordered that the national flag be flown at half-mast until the evening of the funeral as part of the mourning period.
In terms of the state official and provincial official funeral policy manual of the presidency, the state funeral category 2 is reserved for the Deputy President of the Republic, an acting president, and former Deputy President. The state funeral category 2 is conducted with prescribed military ceremonial honors.
At least 11 people have been killed during anti-government protests in Kenya and 567 arrested. Dr. Aaron Sikuku, a medic at Eagle Nursing Home on the outskirts of Nairobi, said the bodies of two people who died of gunshot wounds had been brought to the facility. The demonstrations were due to be held across Kenya to mark the anniversary of pro-democracy unrest in 1990. The BBC's Joel Kiriungi has the details.
Police said it was their constitutional duty to protect lives and property while maintaining public order. Recent protests have turned violent, with armed groups looting and attacking demonstrators. Today's protests mark the 35th anniversary of the historic 7th of July demonstrations, which were a turning point in the struggle for multi-party democracy in Kenya.
Musical icon Angelique Kidjo says the decision to award her a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame is an important signal. Last week, the 64-year-old became the first black African performer to be given the honor. Kidjo, who comes from the West African country of Benin, has won 5 Grammy Awards, was among the 35 names announced as part of the Walk of Fame's Class of 2026 list. Speaking to the BBC, Kidjo said the world needs to see talent no matter its background.
I hope that this is going to open the door for other African artists or artists of any background, basically, to have their place and to be recognized for what they do for the human being that we are, all of us, without the language you speak, the skin color you have, wherever you come from. We need to be able to recognize people's excellencies no matter where they come from.
Russia's transport minister has been found dead in his car on the outskirts of Moscow, hours after it was announced he'd been dismissed. Russian media reports suggest Roman Starovyot may have been under investigation for corruption, but there's no official communication. He was found with a gunshot wound, and the principal hypothesis is that he took his own life. The BBC's Steve Rosenberg has the details.
This morning, the Kremlin announced that Roman Starovyot had been sacked from the post of Russian transport minister. No reason was given. In the afternoon, the news broke that the former minister was dead. According to investigators, suspected suicide. Before his appointment as transport minister last year, Mr. Starovyot was governor of Russia's Kursk region, bordering Ukraine. The man who succeeded him there as governor, Alexei Smirnov, was only in the job a few months. Earlier this year, he was arrested and charged with large-scale fraud.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please you send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulo Mwebe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In a sports headline, Mali hold on for narrow win over tireless Tanzania in Morocco. And Vian Mulder creates history with his historic 367 not out against Zimbabwe. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Nelson Mandela taught us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it.
We should all bear in mind that the greatest glory of living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time you fall.
This Mandela Month, Channel Africa salutes everyday heroes. On Channel Africa, the African Perspective. Catch us on Satellite Channel PAS 10.
Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et vos 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, it's 9 minutes past 7 Central African time, and which means it's actually 9 minutes past 8 in Kenya, which is where we go to now. This past Monday, Kenya marked the 35th anniversary of the historic Saba Saba pro-democracy protests, with renewed demonstrations across the country, most notably Nairobi's Kangemi suburb. What began as a symbolic call for justice and better governance quickly turned violent. Police reportedly used live ammunition, tear gas, and water cannon to disperse crowds. At least 10 people are believed to have been killed and dozens of others injured, raising serious concern about excessive force, the deployment of plainclothes police officers, and allegations of defying a court order requiring police officers to wear identifiable uniforms as well as badges. To help us unpack the situation and what it means for civil liberties in Kenya, we're now joined by Ernest Cornell from the Kenya Human Rights Commission. Ernest, thanks very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Peter, for hosting me.
So what is Kenya Human Rights Commission's overall assessment of the police response to the Saba protests this year?
As at 6:30 p.m. yesterday, police had extrajudicially killed at least 9 people across 24 counties where these protests were taking place. Another at least 29 were injured and more than 60 were arrested. The police response as well as was very, very brutal. This response come days after the Interior Minister said that he's going to protect any police officer who is going to take away life. So it's happening in a context where police have a cover from the executive of protection when they are going to commit excesses.
We've seen video footage of police officers allegedly operating without uniforms or name tags, and this violates a court order issued earlier this year. Has the Commission been able to verify this, and what might be the legal implications of disregarding a court order like this?
Yes, we've been able to verify that police indeed have been operating with their faces covered, without official uniform when in operations. Even the cars that they're operating with either have their number plates altered or they don't have number plates at all. You are right. This is contrary to a Malindi court decision that said they must be identifiable. They must not use excessive force. They must not use water cannon. They must not use bullets and tear gas. In fact, another order that was made by court 2 weeks ago after the June 25th protest, in which a case was filed by KHRC and Katiba Institute. The court also prohibited police from targeting places of shelter, of safe places like hospitals, ambulances, and churches. The implication of this is that those who commit these violations, those who commit these crimes, which are almost amounting to crimes against humanity, will not be held accountable because they have covered themselves, and it makes it even difficult for people to identify themselves so that they can be arrested and arraigned. It is a duty of the Independent Police Oversight Authority to conduct these investigations, and in situations where you're making your identity impossible to know, it becomes a challenge for those who are responsible for investigating your crimes to have you arrested.
What evidence is there that these plainclothes officers are actually members of the police and not something more sinister?
First, in Kenya, it in such operations, police, law enforcement officers are the one being deployed. You won't see vigilante group operating with guns and the kind of armor that those people were having. Another evidence is that sometimes they work hand in hand with uniformed officers. They appear to be coordinating their operations. That's the evidence that we have that indeed these are security officers.
To what extent were these protests peaceful before police intervention? And is there any evidence that some protesters might have initiated some violence?
We appreciate that there have been situations where these peaceful demonstrations have been infiltrated, and these infiltrations are usually state-led. What the state does is to infiltrate, make the protest look violent so that it delegitimize the concerns of those going to the streets. As always, we have seen when people show up on the street very peacefully, police are the one triggering violence. They unnecessarily start tossing tear gas, start firing in there, and in that situation, it causes panic and people start to run away. During that mayhem, they create a conducive environment where it allows state-hired goons to start wreaking havoc.
Overall, as a Human Rights Commission, how would you assess the state of play in the country at the moment? I mean, it feels like as a journalist, we're reporting on one incident after another week by week now. Are things getting worse on the human rights front in Kenya?
This is a crisis. Things are getting worse. In 2023, anti-finance bill protest, at least 100 were killed. Last year, 2024, at least 63 were killed, but records shows that more than 100 people were killed because state was very, very intentional on suppressing the numbers. This year, so far, since June 25th, 19 people have already been killed by the police. Today, we're speaking about almost 19 unofficially who have been taken out by the police. We are still collecting data and we know the total might be higher. Within just 2 weeks after June 25th, we've seen 38 people, almost 38, with confirmation of today's toll, at least 38 would have already been taken out by the police. There is an escalation of intimidation. There's an escalation of suppression by the state, and this is likely to go on ahead of the election. Remember, it's during election where state violence is usually on the rise because the regime of the day try to consolidate power, and they may use anything possible to make sure that they still retain their positions and whatever they are doing.
And what is your protector-in-chief, the president, saying about all of this?
Well, like his Minister of Interior, at some point he congratulated police officers, security officers, for a job well done. And what was that job well done? It was killing people. We've not seen any political goodwill in having these officers getting arrested, arraigned for the crimes that they are committed. There is no political goodwill.
All right, Ernest, we're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately, but thank you so much indeed for that very important update.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. That's Ernest Cornell from the Kenya Human Rights Commission saying that there's a crisis in the country at this time.
Mix Vibration sur Channel Africa.
C'est notre invitée du jour, la belle Aïna Mwenze. Elle est là, certaines l'appellent Boss Lady.
Bonjour Monsieur Jolino.
Parlez-nous un tout petit peu de vous.
Je m'appelle Boss Lady Aïna. Je mets l'accent sur le nom de Boss Lady parce que je mérite cela après le travail fait. Et c'est une rémunération en titre de la personne que je suis devenue aujourd'hui. Épouse et une mère de 4 garçons. Et voilà ce que je peux dire pour l'instant.
Et vous vous êtes lancé dans le business, comment c'est venu?
En tant que mère et se retrouvant dans les pays étrangers, particulièrement en Afrique du Sud, je me disais que laisser les enfants sur la charge des travailleurs ou d'une bonne, ça serait pas très intéressant. Je me suis dit, bon, je dois essayer de m'organiser et trouver un emploi que je peux faire.
Mix Vibration, tous les dimanches de 18h à 19h, temps universel.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
The National Planning Commission, or the NPC, and the South African Local Government Association, SALGA, hosted an online symposium with local government officials, academics and researchers to discuss the NPC's January 2025 advisory note. The note addresses challenges in implementing the Climate Change Act, that's number 22 of 2024, and outlines support strategies for municipalities. Over 100 delegates from all government spheres and key stakeholders participated. For more on this, we're joined by Joanne Yawich, Commissioner on both the National Planning Commission and the Presidential Climate Commission. Joanne, good morning, and thank you for making time to chat to us.
Morning, Asanda. It's a pleasure.
As a commissioner on both the NPC and PCC, how do you see these two bodies working together to support the implementation of the Climate Change Act?
The National Planning Commission, in the National Development Plan, there's a commitment to move South Africa towards a low carbon and climate resilient society. And the Presidential Climate Commission, a much later establishment, is very much focused on working with all stakeholders in relation to South Africa's climate policy. So there's a great deal of synergy and a commitment to align and to work together on an issue that is becoming ever more critical for the country.
What are the key gaps that you are seeing in local government capacity to implement climate change and policies, and how can national coordination improve that?
Okay, I'm sure we all are very conscious of the fact that climate disasters are happening increasingly commonly. I mean, we've just seen a tragic loss of life and property in the Eastern Cape, for example. And this is becoming ever more common. And in local government, there is often both a lack of capacity, not enough people to do the job. There's often a lack of data and information that would enable local government to be much more prepared, and a lack of knowledge sometimes that means that actions that could quite easily be taken at an early stage, for example, dealing with stormwater management that would prevent flooding is not there. And so there's an urgent need for money, for resources, for capacity, and in particular for local government to be able to integrate climate information into the way that planning happens and into the way that it is structured, so that you avoid the problem and you don't have to deal with it after the fact.
Right. From the recent NPC SALGA roundtable, what stood out to you the most in terms of what needs urgent intervention and a move from planning to implementation?
Okay, I think there were a couple of things. I think one of the things that we identified was the need for a great deal of education and awareness across the local government sphere in relation to climate change and its impacts. To do that, we need information that is produced in particular by our very excellent academic community in a form that local government can use and in an appropriate way. And we identified the need for political leadership and political will. And I think that what was striking in our workshop was in municipalities where this is a serious issue for leadership, you do find that climate action is able to be taken at a much earlier stage, and that the results are much better. So I think it's a combination. Of factors. We are committed to working with the Local Government Association, with the PCC, with the academic community to try now and in a much more concrete way work out how that can all be taken forward and turned into the kind of information and support that will really enable the planning framework in the Climate Change Act to be something that is very effective.
And in terms of the private sector and civil society, what role can they play then in supporting municipalities to meet their climate obligations under this Climate Change Act?
I think certainly in areas where you have leadership from government and from municipalities, it is then much easier for civil society, I think, to work with their constituencies in a municipality, and for business to understand what its role is, particularly in being able to take preventative action around climate disasters, as well as what it needs to do in order to reduce its emissions. So I do think those partnerships are really important. It's something that did come up in the workshop. And that I think for the PCC as an organization that is a multi-stakeholder organization is very critical that all of those actors in society are working together and collaboratively.
All right. Thank you so much again for your time, Joanne. You have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you. It's an absolute pleasure. Goodbye.
Thanks. Joanne Yawich is a commissioner on South Africa's National Planning Commission, as well as the Presidential Climate Commission.
Now, democracy across Africa is under threat, and that's not just from bad elections, but also from powerful elites and business moguls that are capturing state institutions. The Democracy Capture Index, launched in Accra in Ghana, places South Africa in the medium risk category alongside Ghana. Channel Africa's Eric Mawena Egbeta has more from Accra.
A new report from the Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD Ghana, is raising red flags about the health of democratic governance across the African continent. The Democracy Capture Index report finds worrying levels of what it calls democracy capture in 10 African countries, including South Africa. Dr. John Osai Kwapon is Democracy and Development Fellow with CDD Ghana.
In the index, it could refer to the President, Prime Minister, the CEO of a parastatal, or the head of an agency. And when asked who is the main perpetrator of the various actions that our country assesses identified as actions of capture, we see that your chief executive across all of the countries tends to be the main perpetrator of democracy capture, with a couple of exceptions in the case of Ghana, Mozambique, South Africa, and Tanzania.
The report studied 370 public institutions and agencies across 10 African countries, assessing the extent to which powerful individuals or groups are able to unduly influence or appropriate democratic institutions and their outcomes for their own benefits. The DemCam Index paints a mixed picture. Countries like Botswana and Senegal were ranked as having low levels of democracy capture, between 19 and 25%. South Africa, along with Ghana, fell in the medium risk category, scoring between 28 and 35%. But in places like Nigeria and Mozambique, capture levels were alarmingly high, ranging from 66 to 71%, and countries like Kenya, Benin, Tanzania, and the DRC recorded extremely high levels of democracy capture, up to 100% in some institutions. For South Africa, the findings strike a familiar chord. The nation has been reckoning with the legacy of state capture. Dr. Sithembile Mbete of the Public Affairs Research Institute says the report confirms what many South Africans already know.
This report highlights for South Africa, firstly, how much work still needs to be done around strengthening the institutions of democracy and where the vulnerabilities are for our democratic institutions to be captured, whether that's by business people or other influential people. I think the second thing is that it does show to some degree how much progress has been done from the kind of heydays of state capture a few years ago and the work that's been done to try to strengthen institutions. But I think the last thing for me is that it does show also how regional effects can be. So there's 4 countries from West Africa, 3 countries from Southern Africa, 2 from East Africa, and 1 from Central Africa that have been studied as part of this report. And I think what's been really interesting for me speaking to other colleagues is the commonalities between different countries within different regions.
The report doesn't just highlight problems, it also calls for strengthening oversight institutions, protecting whistleblowers, and building citizen trust in public agencies. Dr. John Osai Kwapon is Democracy and Development Fellow with TDD Ghana.
The top 3 institutions or agencies vulnerable to future and continued capture policy making, vertical accountability, and implementing. The worrying finding here is that your vertical accountability institutions, because those include your civil society organizations, your media. So you can imagine those who try to play a fair and impartial arbiter role in our democratic spaces, experiencing capture from any of these perpetrators and what becomes of our efforts to ensure that there is democratic resilience.
Whether it's South Africa or Senegal, Ghana or the DRC, the sustainability of democracy depends on resilient institutions and informed citizens. As Africa continues to build its democratic future, the DEMCAM Index report offers a timely reminder that true democracy is not only about elections. Eric Beda for Channel Africa Radio from Accra, Ghana.
Right, it's a little bit before 1:30, and you know me, at this time I like to go back in history and take a look back at some key events that took place. And Sudan's government and the Sudan People's Liberation Army, SPLA, in 1994 signed the Declaration of Principles in Nairobi, Kenya, agreeing to the principle of self-determination for southern Sudan. And this marked a major step towards peace. That was 1994. But it was only 2011, on the eve of its independence in South Sudan's capital, Juba, on this day, remarkably, was filled with jubilant scenes as citizens prepared for the birth of Africa's newest nation. The formal declaration of independence was set for July the 9th. So today, people were very, very excited about the new nation that was going to be born tomorrow. And hopefully we're going to do something quite big on that story tomorrow. The youngest country in the world coming into being on July the 9th, 2011. So today, in 2011, people were very excited about the future indeed. It is 7:30, which means it's time for our news headlines. Here's Jwalane Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa says allegations by KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Police Commissioner Ndoro Mkhwanazi against SAPS members and Police Minister Senzo Mchunu will be speedily addressed following a thorough probe. Among others, Mkhwanazi told journalists that Mchunu had associations with dubious characters and that high-ranking police officers were corrupt. At least 11 people have been killed during anti-government protests in Kenya and 567 arrested. And finally, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has formally nominated U.S. President Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. Trump hosted Netanyahu and his delegation over dinner at the White House last night amid growing hopes of a 60-day ceasefire in Gaza, which would include the release of Israeli hostages. I will have details on these and other stories at 8 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's find out what's happening in the world of sports now. Here's Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. We begin with football news. Mali secured a hard-fought 1-0 victory over Tanzania in a tightly contested CAF Women's Africa Cup of Nations clash in Bekan in Morocco. Mali managed the game with discipline, soaking up pressure and making key defensive interventions when needed. In addition, goalkeeper Fatoumata Karentau played a crucial role in preserving the lead, making multiple saves and commanding her area well. The game's only goal came in first half stoppage time when Sarato Traore found the bottom right corner with a composed finish from the center of the box following a set-piece situation in the closing minutes of the first half. Some more football news. Defending Women's Africa Cup of Nations champions South Africa have shown fine form in the first match of their title defense to beat Ghana 2-0 in their opening Group C match in Oujouada in Morocco. Both goals were scored in the first half, with midfielder Linda Motalo and striker Jermaine Seposenwe finding the back of the net. It was a positive start to the WAFCON tournament for Desiree Ellis's team, who had the lion's share of possession but fewer shots on target. Ghana won 3 of the previous 5 matches played between these two sides, while 2 draws. Banyana's next match is on Friday evening against Tanzania at the same venue. And the Confederations of African Football, CAF General Secretary Veron Musengo Omba, will continue in his role after he was cleared of any wrongdoing by the Joint Investigations Committee's report into the allegations of governance, non-compliance within the CAF Secretariat. This was confirmed by CAF President Patrice Motsepe during a press conference held after the CAF Executive Committee meeting in Rabat, Morocco this past weekend.
They found that there was no behavior or conduct that amounted either to money having been stolen, as some people were speculating outside, which is false. The report didn't say anything. In fact, even the allegations, there were issues that were raised there. And the conclusion of the Joint Investigation Committee was they found nothing that was improper. They found nothing had been done that was wrong.
Now, cricket news. Proteas stand-in captain Vian Mulder ended his innings on 367 not out when Brian Lara's world record of 400 was inside. Mulder's name is etched into the Test cricket history and will remain there for decades to come. The number 367 with a tiny asterisk indicating that he was undefeated will be right beside his name. Mulder declared at lunch on day 2 against Zimbabwe with that figure next to his name and South Africa's total on 626 for 5. And Vian Mulder has this to say.
I think in the first point of it all, we have to keep the main thing, and that is winning the test match. I felt like we were in a good position to do that. And I didn't have to bat any longer. And also, I think respecting the game is really important. Letting someone like Brian Lara keep his record. He's one of the greatest to ever play the game, so he deserves that. And yeah, I think we're still in a great position to win the game, and that's all that matters.
For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fide Lingwadi.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa. It's time to plug into the heartbeat of the continent. Tune in to Channel Africa, your go-to radio station that broadcasts in 5 different languages.
L'Afrique du Sud célèbre la journée nationale du
Kabla hujaitwa kwa jina la Double K or more of our forests have been destroyed.
Tamo kutuli bwanji ndi Partido Africano da Independência da Guiné.
See, Channel Africa represents every corner of this amazing land. From Lagos to Cape Town, Nairobi to Dakar, we've got you covered with the freshest news, music, and cultures. So, turn up the volume, feel the rhythm. Enjoy the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, it's time to catch you up with more business news. Here's Tabiso Lihoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Peter, and good morning. The South African Revenue Service has officially kicked off the 2025 tax filing season. Provisional and non-provisional taxpayers have started receiving notifications for automatic assessment. The auto-assessment is targeted at taxpayers with one or more sources of income from formal and other forms of employment and uncomplicated tax affairs. SARS Commissioner Edward Kisweta says 5.5 million taxpayers have been identified for automatic tax assessment.
As from today to the 20th, we will release auto-assessment messages in batches to taxpayers. We generally prioritize refunds because we know how important this is for taxpayers and how important this is for the economy. Many taxpayers are financially distressed and a refund is a very welcome relief.
The Citrus Growers Association of Southern Africa, the CGA, says it hopes that South Africa's Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen will focus on plans to increase access to new markets when delivering his budget vote speech today. The association has outlined key priorities that will help the industry grow and export a total of 260 million 15-kilogram cartons by 2032. Citrus, South Africa's largest agricultural export industry, contributing close on $2 million in foreign revenue per season. CGA Chief Executive Officer Dr. Boitshoko Nchabele says that their projections indicate that will be another record year, with just over 171 million cartons of citrus expected to be exported by the end of October.
One of the key issues that we would like government to focus on ahead of the budget vote is the issue of market access. One of the things that has enabled the citrus industry to grow has been accessing new markets. And with the advent of Trump tariffs, we need to find new markets.
The Central Bank of Egypt is likely to leave its main overnight interest rates unchanged, pausing a trend of rate reductions following a stubborn increase in inflation over the last few months. Median forecasts in the poll of 19 analysts indicated the central bank would leave the deposit rate at 24% and the lending rate at 25%. Egypt's central bank had been working to reduce inflation, which has trended downwards from a peak of 38% in September 2023. U.S. President Donald Trump has posted a letter to President Cyril Ramaphosa on Truth Social, informing him that South Africa will be charged a tariff of 30% from the 1st of August on all products sent into the United States if a new trade deal is not reached by that date. The new tariffs will take effect on the 1st of August. The Trump administration has said letters will go out notifying trade partners without a deal with room to negotiate until the 9th of August. Show and Bryce Peace reports that the U.S. trade deficit with South Africa last year stood at $8.8 billion.
South Africa was among a number of countries to be issued a tariff letter from President Trump on Monday, including Japan, South Korea and Malaysia, among others. Trump said that the letter demonstrated the strength and commitment of the trading relationship despite having a significant trade deficit with South Africa. Trump said the relationship had been far from reciprocal and that starting August 1st, a 30% tariff would be placed on all South African products, separate from all sectoral tariffs.
Oil prices have eased after rising almost 2% in the previous session. This as investors assess the new developments on U.S. tariffs and a higher-than-expected OPEC Plus output hike for August. Brent crude futures dropped 21 U.S. cents at $69.37 a barrel. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude fell 24 cents at $67.69 a barrel. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 529. Botswana 13.13. Kenya 128 shilling 455, and in Zambia it's at 24 kwacha 19. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5 ril 44. Russia 78 rubles 52. India 85 rupees 78. China 7 yuan 17, and in South Africa the dollar will cost you 17 rand 74 cents. $1 is trading at 73 cents to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Gold is trading at $3,331. Platinum $1,370 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $69.36 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
Now, allegations of deep-rooted criminality within South Africa's police service have rocked the country's KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner. Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi has accused senior police officials, including the Minister of Police and the Deputy National Commissioner, of links to criminal syndicates, claiming that attempts to clean up the force were obstructed from within. Now, Parliament's Police Committee Chairperson Ian Cameron is calling for an independent commission of inquiry to investigate these serious claims. Meanwhile, the ANC, the African National Congress, the country's largest party, has said that it will defer the matter to President Cyril Ramaphosa and expects Parliament to respond accordingly. Let's hear from two key voices in this unfolding drama. We begin with the chairperson of the Parliament's Police Committee, Ian Cameron, speaking to the media briefing on Monday, where he called for a special commission of inquiry into the allegations made by Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi, and he stressed the need for independent investigations into alleged police involvement in organised crime.
The damning allegations made by the KZN Provincial Commissioner yesterday, Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, has placed the necessary focus on the integrity, or rather the lack thereof, in the entire criminal justice system. This is not just an indictment on the South African Police Service or parts of it, it's an indictment on the criminal justice system. If what has been said is true, it explains why the system has not been able to effectively arrest the ever-increasing criminality in the country. The allegations are not only damning to a few individuals, it indicates a whole systematic weakening of the police to enable corruption and to undermine the rule of law. The revelations paint a picture of a very weak system, a very broken system, obviously a corrupt one, corruption riddled in the entire institution of the criminal justice system, and a system that can be manipulated at the whims of a connected few. The arrests of senior officers in the crime intelligence environment over the last few weeks for allegations of fraud and corruption, as well as yesterday's revelations, require urgent action from the President. As the head of state, the President has a responsibility to implement an intensive investigation into the corruption allegations at SAPS to protect and promote the credibility of the service. Over and above this, the revelations have given credence to the call by the committee for an extensive skills and lifestyle audit. I actually want to go as far as saying we need to go through an entire integrity commission to get to the bottom of the rot in the South African Police Service. We cannot continue one more day with criminals masquerading as police officers. For its part, the committee will have to determine the need for an urgent meeting where the protagonists are called to account. The entire committee is in agreement that such a session must be held, and we have already written to the Speaker as well as the House Chairperson for the relevant processes to take place. I wrote to the Speaker of the National Assembly yesterday to also ask for an urgent debate on the integrity of the South African Police Service and the implications of the revelations on the credibility and standing of the South African Police Service in the fight against crime. Should the minister be suspended? Well, let's look at it from a policing point of view. If any preliminary investigation indicates any form of political influence from anywhere in the ministry, suspension should be considered. And that is to protect the integrity of the institution and the integrity of the investigation. And that counts for everyone that is potentially implicated. And who would preside? Well, I think if there's a commission, an urgent commission or ad hoc commission of some kind, I think it would be important that it is an ex-judge or an independent individual of that kind. To me, it is critical that we have an independent kind of authority or person that can preside over this process. I don't have the trust, unfortunately, that internally it will be done fairly and without interference.
That was the chairperson of the Parliament's Police Committee, Ian Cameron, speaking there. At the same time, reacting to the claims of the Provincial Police Commissioner of KwaZulu-Natal, Mkhwanazi, ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula said that the ruling party had handed the matter over to President Cyril Ramaphosa and had expected Parliament to act without political interference.
Is raising disparaging issues that borders on lawlessness, make us look like a banana republic. If people say that there are syndicates in the police, there are problems, and there are SMSs, those are disparaging. As a citizen, first, before I'm a member of the ANC, I must be worried. State secrets like that, and a general standing in a platform and say, let's fight. I'm happy to join the fight personally, but at the end of the day, those matters require serious attention. And the president have committed to that. We have deferred all these matters in the capable hands of the state, and we have said as the ANC, the center must hold. We are not a banana republic. When a top cop he raises the issues that you have raised, they must be attended to. We have not criticized Mkhwanazi. What will be the basis to criticize it? We don't know what he's talking about. Because if you criticize a police cop and without information from Luthuli House, and tomorrow you are proven to be on the wrong side and the top cop is on the right side, what are you going to say? Given our history as a country, we like and we dislike anything that seeks to suppress the truth. And the ANC is on the side of the truth, and that's what is important on our part. The president and the state must deal with those matters. The center must hold. We can argue every aspect of what General Mkhwanazi have raised for and against. That's not the way to go about to address a very volatile situation like that. As the ANC, we will put our comment in detail on these matters in reserve up until we get to the bottom of the issues that he raised. Mkhwanazi has been working very well in terms of the fight against crime and all of that, and we're all under the impression that they've been working very well with the minister. Boom, the press conference. So you don't, under those circumstances, we were not forewarned about these challenges. Parliament must do its job. Why should they ask permission? I hear the question that should Parliament investigate? Parliament must do what it is within its realm to deal with matters as they arise. They must do their job. They don't need permission from a political party.
That's the Secretary General of the African National Congress, the ANC. At the same time, to try and make sense of these explosive developments, particularly from a parliamentary perspective, we're now joined by Themba Godi, who's a former chairperson of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, SCOPA, and the leader of the African People's Convention. And he's no stranger to accountability battles in Parliament, has often called for greater oversight in public institutions. Mr. Godi, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Welcome to the program.
Thanks very much. Good to see you.
Great to have you. It's been a while. I hope you've been keeping well.
Indeed. I'm okay. Thanks.
Good. So you've dealt with a lot of high-profile accountability cases in your time, particularly with your time at SCOPA. What's your immediate reaction to the nature and the seriousness of the allegations that have been put forward by the Provincial Police Commissioner, Mkhwanazi?
Well, I must say that was indeed quite explosive in terms of its breadth and in terms of its details. It was not saying something that many people did not suspect. It's only that it was now confirming, those suspicions. And in my work in the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, we've dealt with many departments. But let's zoom in on the police, because I've engaged with the police leadership from Jackie Silibe through to Ria Pierre, right up to Kehla Stoll. And in all these engagements, I think the impression that I had that I have is that the police seem to have a problem of networks of corruption. To what extent it is something that one could not tell. And I dare say that the last commissioner, Sithole, really tried his best to try and untangle these networks. And as a committee, we had much more time. We had many, many meetings, being focused and being systematic in our engagements. And it became clear that there are networks of corruption. Remember, in 2014, Cabinet took a decision that all people who are dealing with finances in public entities must be vetted. And the police was one of the departments that refused to be vetted, meaning that their integrity could not be confirmed, could not be verified. But to the extent that it involves political leaders, MPs, prosecutors, I think that takes it to another level.
And what do you make of the fact that the Provincial Police Commissioner made these allegations at a press briefing rather than perhaps going through internal channels? We haven't heard from the National Police Commissioner about what's happening under his watch and between two of his most senior police officials. It's quite incredible for some of us watching this.
No, very true. Very true. And I can tell you it is not out of recklessness. Remember, General Mkhwanazi was once an National Police Commissioner, and we engaged with him. We called him to Parliament. And the impression I have is that the man is a policeman through and through. No other interests and no other characteristics come out of him. And for him to have gone the way he did, for me, suggests that he feels frustrated by internal processes, or actually realizes that internal processes are so compromised that it will be a waste of time, and felt, I'd rather take this to the public. Or maybe there was imminent action against him, and so, or against some people who were actually fighting crime, and felt, let me do a preemptive strike by taking this to the public so that the negative forces will have no opportunity to act anymore and throw them into the defensive.
What's the best way for the president to deal with this issue? The police probably can't investigate themselves. Parliament, as you have alluded, can only do as much as it can with the cooperation of the police. What's required here? Are we talking judicial commissions of inquiry, or what level can this be unraveled?
You remember the Jali Commission that was probing corruption in the prisons when two criminals, Kenny Kunene and Gayton Mackenzie, who happens to be now a Minister of Sport, whistleblowed about corruption in the prisons when they were prisoners. Not political prisoners, criminal prisoners, by the way. And then we had the Jali Commission that did not only focus on the narrow issues that were raised in that specific prison, but looked at the whole system. Now, I believe that the best way forward is to have a judicial commission of inquiry headed by a retired judge that would look at the entire system. Because remember, a few weeks back, there were senior officials that were arrested of the police. There's a lady, I think she's a former police woman, who has been making all sorts of allegations, specific allegations against specific senior police officials, and she's in hiding, she's this and that. So it is not something that is, and if you can ask me here in my rural home, Ekonuk Police Station, Mkutu Police Station, Bushbuck Ridge Police Station, Tulamash Police Station, I know the citizens here have no trust in the police because of corruption. So it is a systemic issue that cannot be addressed by the usual call by the president. Can you can you explain yourself to the minister, and then I'll take a decision. And I think the country being so fed up with crime, South Africa is the most unequal country in the world, and poverty either creates revolutionaries or criminals. So you have that aspect. But when you have senior people being involved in crime, it's all about greed and not because of poverty. So I think a judicial commission of inquiry will be the best way to clean the entire system.
So the allegations imply that this is quite widespread, not just the police, but politicians as well as the judiciary itself. Do you have a gut feeling that that might be true?
No, absolutely. I mean, when we're dealing with the corruption at the South African Airways, where you find that people will steal the gearbox of an aeroplane, it will tell you that it's not an act of one or two people. It is a syndicate that needed the security guy, that needed the person at the stores, that needed a person, So equally in this instance, you have syndicates that would involve the police, but then you also need the cooperation of the prosecutors. You then have the politicians to give the cover up. Like you see in this instance where a task team was disbanded, you need a political authority. Cases withdrawn, So I think that it definitely is a syndicate that stretches right across all related departments, which that's why a commission of inquiry will then look at the totality of the spectrum to be able to see where the challenges are and to be able to recommend a way out of it.
Themba Godi, it's been far too long. Thank you so much indeed for joining us, and I hope that it's not a long time again till we speak again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much indeed. That's Themba Godi, someone who's a veteran in terms of accountability. Once the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, SCOPA, in South Africa, and a political party leader in the country as well. Talking to us about this explosive story. Allegations made by the provincial police commissioner in KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa against the police minister as well as the deputy police commissioner. A story we'll keep on top of.
It's 8 o'clock Central African time. We now enter the third and final hour of Africa Rise and Shine. It's the 8th of July. Happy Tuesday. And if you've just joined us, thank you for doing that. A very good morning to you. My name is Asanda Beda. I'm with Peter Ndoro.
A very good morning to you. Thanks so much. Yeah, this is the final hour of the program. www.channelafrica.co.za is where we're streaming live from. But you have an interesting half hour to take us through.
I do. This hour, we're going to be looking at the feud between U.S. President Donald Trump and South African-born businessman Elon Musk, and how that's been reignited, with the U.S. president suggesting that the South African-born billionaire should head back home. Also talks of a new political party, possibilities of that Elon Musk is wanting to challenge the Trump administration with. And then also looking at the issue of tariffs that the U.S. president is wanting to apply to 14 countries. So we'll be looking at basically those U.S. relations in this hour.
I'm fascinated by Americans who say, go back home, because the only people are the native inhabitants of the country, who were then called by these invaders Indians for some reason, because Columbus got lost. He thought he was in India when he actually landed in the Americas. And so they've got this name, the Indians, the native inhabitants of America. All of them are immigrants, and they should all go home, back to Europe and everywhere else. But anyway, that's all coming up after the news with Jwalane Tulongwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. The situation remains tense in Nairobi, Kenya, following yesterday's anti-government protests. At least 11 people have been killed and 567 arrested in the demonstrations, which were planned to be held across Kenya to mark the anniversary of pro-democracy unrest in 1990. Kenya Human Rights Commission's Ernest Cornell says the country is in crisis on the human rights front and that the situation is getting worse.
There is an escalation of intimidation. There's an escalation of suppression by the state, and this is likely to go on ahead of the election. Remember, it's during election where state violence is usually on the rise because the regime of the day try to consolidate power, and they may use anything possible to make sure that they still retain their positions and whatever they are doing.
South Africa's Parliament's Police Portfolio Committee chairperson Ian Cameron has called for an ad hoc commission to be established to investigate allegations of criminality in the police service. This comes after allegations by the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Ndoro Mkhwanazi that Police Minister Senzo Mchunu is affiliated to persons linked to criminal activities. He also accused some senior police officials of being involved in corruption. Cameron says a range of interventions should be implemented, like vetting and lifestyle audits, as well as establishing an ad hoc committee.
The first one is an appointment of some kind of an ad hoc inquiry or commission with a clear timeline to urgently investigate the allegations. And I must emphasize with this the importance of the dockets that were mentioned yesterday by General Mkhwanazi, that those dockets or the processes regarding them should be frozen until an independent inquiry can be done. I think it is a massive risk to just leave them in the system after what we heard yesterday.
Meanwhile, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa says allegations by Mkhwanazi will be speedily addressed following a thorough probe. Ramaphosa addressed the media in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, following the wrapping up of the 17th BRICS Leaders Summit.
Obviously, it is a matter that I will be dealing with when I get home. I will need to look at it more closely and have a thoroughgoing discussion with a number of people, and thereafter there will be a clear way forward. This is not a matter that we should not give attention to. It is a serious matter. It has to do with the security of our people, but it also has to do with our adherence to the rule of law. The police play a critical role in enhancing the rule of law, the safety of South Africans, and that those who have done wrong should be dealt with thoroughly in terms of our constitution and our laws.
South Africa's Health Minister Aaron Motsoaledi says he will act in due course on recommendations contained in a report on medical aid schemes. The Section 59 investigation panel into allegations of racial discrimination by medical aid schemes against black healthcare providers concluded that the right of procedural fairness of some individual practitioners was violated. Dr. Motsoaledi has confirmed that Discovery, GEMS and Med Scheme are among the medical aid schemes implicated in the report.
Today, they were now releasing the final findings that indeed they found it to be true, that there's racial profiling and racial action taken against black doctors, meaning Africans, Indians, and coloreds. They concentrated mostly on 3 medical schemes. That is Discovery, GEMS, and Med Scheme. The 3 of them constitute 80% of all the members of medical schemes in the country. And if you are able to make findings on 80%, statistically it means the other 20% will sort of fall in place.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has formally nominated U.S. President Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. Trump hosted Netanyahu and his delegation over dinner at the White House last night amid growing hopes of a 60-day ceasefire in Gaza, which would include the release of Israeli hostages. In this exchange, the Israeli leader handed Trump a copy of the letter he wrote to the Nobel Prize Committee.
The president has already realized great opportunities. He forged the Iran Accords. He's forging peace as we speak in one country and one region after the other. So I want to present to you, Mr. President, the letter I sent to the Nobel Prize Committee. It's nominating you for the Peace Prize, which is well deserved, and you should get it.
Thank you very much. This I didn't know. Wow. Thank you very much. Coming from you in particular, this is very meaningful. Thank you very much, baby.
Thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulo Webe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Now, sports headline, Kenyan Faith Kipyegon set a world record in the 1,500 meters at the Profontaine Classic. And Vian Mulder creates history with his historic 367 against Zimbabwe. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
The feud between U.S. President Donald Trump and South African-born businessman Elon Musk has been reignited, with the U.S. president suggesting the South African-born billionaire should head back home. This comes after the tech businessman threatened to form a new political party and challenge Republican lawmakers running for re-election. Nick Harper filed this report from Washington.
From bromance to bust-up, relations have continued to worsen between US President Donald Trump and Elon Musk. At issue is the billionaire's staunch opposition towards the president's key signature legislation, the Big Beautiful Bill, which President Trump is hoping Congress will pass before Friday this week. Musk has criticized the bill as a non-partisan organization predicts it will add $3.3 trillion to the US national debt, as well as cuts to key services and healthcare provisions for vulnerable Americans. Musk has called Trump's legislation insane and has promised to launch the America Party, a third political party to rival the Republicans and the Democrats if the bill passes. He told his 220 million followers on X the US needs an alternative to the Democrat-Republican uniparty so that the people actually have a voice. The tech guru has also threatened to fund anyone who wants to challenge Republican lawmakers who are coming up for re-election. That's despite Musk being the country's biggest Republican donor, donating almost $300 million to Republican candidates in the 2024 election. Well, as you'd expect, Donald Trump has not taken the criticism well. He's already threatened to cut government contracts and subsidies for Musk's companies, including Tesla and SpaceX. And in one of his latest posts has added that without subsidies, Elon would probably have to close up shop and head back home to South Africa. And the president has suggested the department that Musk recently headed up, the Department of Government Efficiency, should now investigate Musk's companies and look for ways to save the government money. The president adding there would be big money to be saved. Nick Harper, SABC News, Washington.
So we're joined now by Musa Mdunge, political analyst and a PhD candidate from the University of Dundee, to unpack this story as well as other parts of the US's relations with other countries as far as tariffs are concerned. Musa, thank you for joining us. How are you this Tuesday?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm well, and how are you doing?
I'm well, thank you so much. We appreciate you making time. Donald Trump, the U.S. president, saying Musk's plans or Elon Musk's plans to launch a new political party are ridiculous. He's been reported as saying that in the press. How serious do you think these plans for this new political party are?
Well, look, it's plans that are emanating from the richest man in the world and a man who played a critical role in the election again of Donald Trump. He threw a lot of money to this election, and it's a consequential moment because possibly what it does represent is the fact that we could see a fundamental split within the Republican Party that really impacts the trajectory of US politics in the next 10, 15 years. Because in many ways, the next year's midterm elections represents for the Republican Party a generational challenge where possibly they may lose control of Congress depending on the swing of the votes. And so while, Elon Musk's party may not in the end win the presidency, but it is possible that they will have an impact. And, even if we look at history, history does point to that effect, even where third parties didn't get electoral votes. Remember 2016, largely Donald Trump's election in that election was based on the impact of third parties in selected swing states that drove the vote towards him rather than Hillary Clinton. So it is a consequential moment.
So the U.S. has always been operating on a two-party system, and you say it might make an impact, this new party. But how likely would this party, in terms of resonating with the American people, be?
Well, let's look at the popularity of Donald Trump's policies currently and what he's pushing. So there is some sort of appetite, if you think on the left, on the Democratic side, where there could be some voters who may possibly swing towards his particular party, in the same way he may chip at some votes in terms of the Republican Party as well. That is why even in his tweet, he notes this by saying that possibly running in about 3 or 4 Senate seats, as well as about 8 or 10 House seats. He understands that he's not going to win a lot of electoral votes. History doesn't point to that. The most third parties have ever won is 6% of the electoral, 16% of the electoral vote in 1912. But that's because you are dealing with Theodore Roosevelt, who was a former president. So in many ways, given how popular, given the influence of Elon Musk, it is possible that it'll have some impact, he'll draw some votes, but I don't see him getting more than 4 or 5% of any electoral vote. But that may count at the end of the day, given how close US elections have tended to be in the past, say, 12 years. It is likely that that will have an impact in the midterms and who becomes president in 2028. And it's not just how he impacts Republicans here. It's also how he can impact Democrats as well. Because one of the criticisms that has been laid on the Democratic Party is that they've been non-existent over these past 6 months as Donald Trump has really ruled, America as a king in many ways. And so there is an opportunity in a space where a third party can do something different and present something different. The appetite is there.
Talking of Elon Musk's influence, is he a convincing candidate for political leadership? And what about his principles give him an advantage to challenge the Republicans and the Democrat parties?
Well, let's look at already the name that he has chosen, right? The name tells you everything about a person. So the America Party, right? He's a person who really, for all intents and purposes, is trying to convince not only himself, not only other political pundits and political players, that truly he is American. This is identity politics at its greatest. And in many ways, you see it even in the rebuttal of Donald Trump, reminding the American population that, Elon Musk is not an American necessarily by birth. He came here by naturalization. And so in many ways, it is a politics of identity that he's likely to present. He would like to believe that he's a symbol of the American dream. And so in many ways, he will present that and how he can take what he has done in Tesla and in his other businesses to the American economy. But he has a problem. He's already been part of government. He has a record, and it didn't go that well as the leader of DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. We know how unpopular that department has been and how it is likely to impact Republicans in very key House seats come next year's midterm elections. So is he somebody who can have an impact in US elections? There is no doubt. He has a lot of money, he has a lot of influence, and he has the businesses that have that give him that kind of influence. But whether it will bite, I just don't see it being that impactful, because after all, this is not 1912. You're not dealing with a former US president here. And history just shows in the last rounds from 1980 until the 2020 elections, no third party has won an electoral vote, though they've been able to hit and hammer in terms of the popular vote, impacting other candidates electoral vote. It's not so much about them. And I think that's what's going to happen this time around again. Rather, the focus has to be on what is the impact on the Republican and the Democratic candidates, whoever they may become next year.
What sort of organizational plans should the America Party look into?
Well, look, the tricky thing here is each state has legislation pertaining to the formation or the registration of a third party. And so, given that Elon Musk has a huge financial sort of chessboard to play with here, and as well as I would imagine he would have the kind of legal representation, and there will be those Republicans who will want to jump on the bandwagon for a good payday. And that will allow him to be able to manage and maneuver the complexity of registering a party in each state. Though American politics is supposed to be geared to be a multi-party political process, the rules of the game are framed in such a way that it's very difficult and very expensive. And so he's already got that issue out of the way, the financial end of things. He has got the muscle. The question is, can he build a team that is going to be effective and a team willing to go against Donald Trump, who, for all intents and purposes, remains very popular. Even with all the tariff hullabaloo, he remains a very popular president. And so in many ways, it's going to be about organizational planning. And I'm not sure maybe that 2026 is really something that is effectively a good plan. But 2028 is where I think if he plans it properly, can really have an impact. But in politics, a day's a long time. Things change, right? And so while he speaks like this today, tomorrow may be a different conversation. And it all depends on where the American economy moves and where this president moves, who makes policy on a whim.
All right. Let's leave it there for today, Musa. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks. Musa Mdunge is a political analyst and a PhD candidate from the University of Dundee, unpacking these relations or lack thereof between Donald Trump and Elon Musk and the new developments of the announcement by Musk to want to launch a new party, calling it the America Party in the US. We're going to discuss further also on this topic and looking at other political developments in the US as far as tariffs are concerned. So stay with us on Rise and Shine.
Right, still with the US. US President Donald Trump has posted a letter to South African President Cyril Ramaphosa on Truth social media platform, informing him that starting August the 1st, South Africa would be charged a tariff of 30% on any and all products sent to the United States. Trump also warned in the letter that were South Africa to raise tariffs on the United States, this figure would be added on top of the 30%. Trump has again cited trade deficits with countries as the main reason for the imposition of this tariff. He earlier also threatened countries that align themselves with the anti-American policies of BRICS with an additional 10% tariff on exports to the United States. Sharon Bryce-Peace picks up the story for us from New York that the current U.S. good trade deficit with South Africa was $8.8 billion in 2024.
South Africa was among a number of countries to be issued a tariff letter from President Trump on Monday, including Japan, South Korea and Malaysia, among others. Trump said that the letter demonstrated the strength and commitment of the trading relationship, despite having a significant trade deficit with South Africa. Trump said the relationship had been far from reciprocal and that starting August 1st, a 30% tariff would be placed on all South African products, separate from all sectoral tariffs. Trump said the letter demonstrated the fact that the USA had agreed to continue working with South Africa despite having a significant trade deficit. He said they concluded that they needed to move away from long-term persistent trade deficits engendered by South Africa's tariff and non-tariff policies and trade barriers, and that due to the non-reciprocal nature of the relationship, they would impose a 30% duty on any and all South African products sent to the United States. He said there would be no tariffs if South African companies decided to build and manufacture products in the United States and could provide approval in a matter of weeks. Carolyn Levitt is the White House press secretary.
I have the signed letters that went out to both South Korea and Japan today, and there will be approximately 12 other countries that will receive notifications and letters directly from the President of the United States. And weeks ago, I stood at this podium and I told all of you that the President was going to create tailor-made trade plans for each and every country on this planet. And that's what this administration continues to be focused on. The President will also sign an executive order today delaying the July 9th deadline to August 1st. So the reciprocal tariff rate or these new rates that will be provided in this correspondence to these foreign leaders will be going out the door within the next month, or deals will be made. And those countries continue to negotiate with the United States. We've seen a lot of positive developments in the right direction, but the administration, the president and his trade team want to cut the best deals for the American people and the American worker. That's what they're focused on.
A July statement from the South African Department of Trade, Industry and Competition pointed to a proposed framework deal first presented to the USA during President Ramaphosa's May visit to the White House that sought to address non-tariff barriers, trade deficits, and commercial relations through two-way procurement or imports of strategic goods. It also seeks to have some key export products, including autos, auto parts, steel and aluminium, exempted from tariffs, while offering to purchase liquefied natural gas from the United States in return. Additionally, the DTIC is seeking exemptions for small and medium enterprises, counter-seasonal products, and products that the United States does not produce. Earlier, President Trump also threatened an additional 10% tariff on countries that align with anti-American policies of the BRICS group, as Levitt explained.
The president feels, generally speaking, that BRICS is seeking to undermine the interests of the United States. It's the president's utmost responsibility to put the interests of the United States first. That's how he views his job as president. So he's going to ensure that America is fairly treated on the world stage, and he'll take any action necessary to prevent countries from taking advantage of the United States and our people.
This is how President Ramaphosa reacted to the BRICS threat before departing the Leaders' Summit in Brazil.
There is nothing negative in the declaration, and there is everything about advancing the interests of various countries in the world, if not all, and the interests of people in the world, so that we leave no one behind. So it is really disappointing that when there is such a very positive collective manifestation such as BRICS, there should be others who see it in negative light and want to punish those who participate in this. It cannot be and should not be. We should be respecting the sovereignty of countries. We should be respecting that we are all equal, that all we should be focusing on is enhancing the prosperity of humanity in all countries. It cannot be that might should now be right, where in the end those who are more powerful are the ones who seek to have vengeance against those who are seeking to do good in the world.
Trump argued that the 30% tariff on South Africa was far less than what was needed to eliminate the trade deficit between the two countries. He said they might consider reviewing the tariff imposed were South Africa to open trading markets to the United States and eliminate trade barriers. All in all, the clearest sign yet that the African Growth and Opportunity Act that allowed duty-free access to the United States for sub-Saharan African countries is no longer a priority for this administration and is likely on a death spiral. I'm Shervin Bryce-Pease in New York.
On South African domestic issues, allegations of racial discrimination and unfair payment practices by medical schemes have returned to the spotlight. On Monday morning, South Africa's Health Minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, officially received the final report from the Section 59 investigation panel. The briefing included responses from government, legal experts, and medical practitioners. Our reporter Lebohang Mabange has the story.
It's been just over 5 years since health professionals first came forward with claims of racial profiling and unfair treatment by medical schemes. Now the final Section 59 report confirms what many have long argued, that the process used by schemes to recover funds from practitioners is deeply flawed. Dr. Thandi Mabeba, chairperson of the Council for Medical Schemes, explained the council's mandate at the handover event in Pretoria.
The council has a mandate to protect the interests of the beneficiaries and the members of the medical schemes, to make recommendations to the Minister of Health on the quality of healthcare services provided for by medical schemes, to investigate complaints and settle disputes in relation to the affairs of the medical schemes as provided for in the Act.
The Section 59 panel was appointed to investigate allegations that Black, Indian and coloured health professionals were unfairly targeted in audits and clawbacks by medical aid administrators. Advocate Tembeka Ncukaitobi, who chaired the panel, confirmed that their final report reaffirms the earlier interim findings.
We found that the schemes should make changes to the manner in which they claw back monies that they claim practitioners owe to them. That was our interim finding. We've received further submissions, but we remain unpersuaded that our interim findings were incorrect. Accordingly, we confirm the findings and recommendations in the interim report, that the procedure that is followed by medical schemes when they claw back monies allegedly owed by practitioners or where they investigate instances of fraud, waste and abuse are unfair.
Ncukaitobi added that the lack of regulation has left room for arbitrary processes by the schemes.
We've made certain recommendations that the schemes can consider, and maybe the minister can consider in relation to any possible amendments to the Act, because part and parcel of the problem is that the Act doesn't actually contain procedures for the administration of fraud, waste and abuse, nor do the regulations. And so what they do effectively, they leave it up to the schemes to make individual decisions about how to claw back or how to investigate or how to impose penalties against allegedly errant practitioners.
Health Minister Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi acknowledged the findings and said the entire system would undergo review.
The whole system is going to be reviewed. We have got now two very important reports. We have got the Section 59 investigation report. We have got the health market inquiry. We have got the NHI Act. We have to find a way how they cross each other, or how they strengthen each other, or how they try to work with each other to solve this problem. So it's still a lot of a way until we're able to find the system correct.
But for some of the original whistleblowers, the process has felt exclusionary. Nomaifese Gajeni, chairperson of Solutionist Thinkers, the group that first raised the complaint, says they were sidelined.
As initial stakeholders that reported these allegations, we observed a huge sidelining on the side of CMS. We never had a chance to even be included in the updates. For everything, we had to continue begging to be part of it. By the way, we hear it as a grapevine. No one is informing us.
General practitioner Dr. Maibana, who is among those affected, shared how MedScheme still owes him money from nearly a decade ago, a debt he believes would have been settled if he were white.
MedScheme was supposed to give me my money of practice from 2014 to 2015 earlier. They have never paid me up until now. And I've asked them, what is the problem? They're telling me that no, the problem was that there was no your bank reports on us. I gave them, they haven't even up until today. But I know that if I was white, I would have long been paid.
As the report now moves into the hands of the Minister of Health, calls are mounting for not just policy change, but real accountability and restitution. The Board of Healthcare Funders has also released a statement firmly rejecting the findings of the final investigation. According to the statement, they are yet to study the final report. However, they are disappointed that the Section 59 inquiry panel has confirmed that it has upheld the findings made in the interim report released in 2021. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange in Pretoria, South Africa.
8:32 Central African time. It is, let's say, good morning to Jolani Tulo Ngwepe with news headlines.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines, the situation remains tense in Nairobi, Kenya. Following yesterday's anti-government protests, at least 11 people have been killed and 567 arrested in the demonstrations, which were planned to be held across Kenya to mark the anniversary of pro-democracy unrest in 1990. South Africa's Police Portfolio Committee chairperson Ian Cameron has called for an ad hoc commission to be established to investigate allegations of criminality in the police service. This comes after allegations by the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Ndoro that Police Minister Senzo Mchunu is affiliated to persons linked to criminal activities. And finally, Israel's defense minister says he has asked the army to look at ways of moving all Palestinians in Gaza into a camp in the south of the territory. I will have details on these and other stories at 9 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's get some perspective on what's been happening on our sports fields, and we find out from Fikile Lingwati what's happening particularly with the AFCON Women's Championships.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. We begin now with athletics. Kenyan athlete Faith Kipyegon set a world record in the 1,500 meters at the Profontaine Classic, finishing in 3 minutes, 48.68 seconds. Kipyegon, a three-time Olympic champion in the event, bested her own record of 3 minutes, 49.04 seconds set last July before the Paris Games. Kipyegon sprinted alone down the stretch, cheered by a sell-out crowd at the Hayward Field. After crossing the finish line, she wrapped herself in the Kenyan flag. Ethiopian Diribe Welteji was second, 3 minutes, 51.44 seconds. Australian Jessica Hall, who was the silver medalist behind Kipyegon at the Olympics last year, was third in 3 minutes, 52.67 seconds. Kipyegon also has won the 1,500 meters at the last three World Championships. She was second in the 5,000 meters at the Paris Olympics last summer. On to football news. Mali secured a hard-fought 1-0 victory over Tanzania in a tightly contested CAF Women's Africa Cup of Nations clash in Bekane in Morocco on Monday night. Mali managed the game with discipline, soaking up pressure and making key defensive interventions when needed. In addition, goalkeeper Fatoumata Karentau played a crucial role in preserving the lead, making multiple saves and commanding her area well. The game's only goal came in the first half stoppage time, when Serato Traore found the bottom right corner with a composed finish from the center of the box following a set-piece situation in the closing minutes of the first half. Now, cricket news. The Proteas stand-in captain Vian Mulder ended his innings on 367 not out when Brian Rallar's world record 400 was inside. Mulder's name is etched into Test cricket history and will remain there for decades to come. Vian has more.
I think in the first point of it all, we have to keep the main thing, and that is winning the Test match. I felt like we were in a good position to do that, and I didn't have to bat any longer. And also, I think respecting the game is really important. Letting someone like Brian Lara keep his record. He's one of the greatest to ever play the game, so he deserves that. And yeah, I think we're still in a great position to win the game, and that's all that matters.
Let's end with golf news. Colin Morikawa's 2-week tour of Scotland and Northern Ireland will come with a new caddy as he partners with Billy Foster. Foster of England has worked for a slew of high-profile clients, the most recent of which was countryman Matt Fitzpatrick before the duo split earlier this season. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Annie Kalonji sur Channel Africa.
Nous allons à présent dérouler notre tapis rouge pour accueillir notre personnalité du jour, l'artiste chanteur Sheki Frey, qui est en ligne de Guinée avec nous.
Je suis un artiste guinéen, un créateur, un styliste et je fais un peu ce qui plaît à mes fans. Voilà, c'est un peu ça. On a beaucoup de genres de trucs à faire, mais bon, pour le moment, on est basé un peu sur le rap.
D'accord. À quelle période de votre vie avez-vous commencé à vous intéresser à la musique, Sheki?
Bon, je crois pas qu'il y ait une période, parce que moi, je suis un mélomane depuis mon petit âge.
Annie Kalonji, tous les dimanches sur Mix Vibration.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week.
Let's check in now with the world of business as we get our final business update news from Tabiso Lehuku for Rise and Shine.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. Oil majors BP and Shell have agreed with Libya's National Oil Corporation to conduct studies for hydrocarbon exploration and development at 3 Libyan oil fields. Libya, Africa's second largest oil producer and a member of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, has suffered from disruptions in oil activities due to disputes between armed rival factions over oil revenues that have often led to oil field shutdowns. Foreign investors have been wary of putting money into Libya, which has been in a state of chaos since the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. The South African Revenue Service has officially kicked off the 2025 filing tax season. Provisional and non-provisional taxpayers have started receiving notifications for automatic assessment. The automatic assessment is targeted at taxpayers with one or more sources of income from formal and other forms of employment and uncomplicated tax affairs. SARS Commissioner Sweater says 5.5 million taxpayers have been identified for automatic tax assessment.
As from today to the 20th, we will release auto-assessment messages in batches to taxpayers. We generally prioritize refunds because we know how important this is for taxpayers and how important this is for the economy. Many taxpayers are financially distressed and a refund is a very welcome relief.
The Citrus Growers Association of Southern Africa, the CGA, says it hopes that the South African Agriculture Minister, John Steenhuisen, will focus on plans to increase access to new markets when delivering his budget vote speech today. The association has outlined key priorities that will help the industry grow and export a total of 260 million 15-kilogram cartons by 2032. Citrus is South Africa's largest agriculture export industry, contributing close on $2 million in foreign revenue per season. CGA Chief Executive Officer Dr. Bitoko Nchabele says that their projections indicate that it will be another record year, with just over 171 million cartons of citrus expected to be exported by the end of October.
One of the key issues that we would like government to focus on ahead of the budget vote is the issue of market access. One of the things that has enabled the citrus industry to grow has been accessing new markets. And with the advent of Trump tariffs, we need to find new markets.
The Central Bank of Egypt is likely to leave its main overnight interest rates unchanged, pausing a trend of rate reductions following a stubborn increase in inflation over the last few months. Median forecasts in the poll of 19 analysts indicated that the central bank would leave the deposit rate at 24% and the lending rate at 25%. Egypt's central bank had been working to reduce inflation, which had trended downwards from a peak of 38% in September 2023. The yen fell broadly after US President Donald Trump reiterated that he plans to impose a 25% tariffs on goods from Japan and South Korea in the latest development of his chaotic trade war. In Australia, the Aussie surged after the country's central bank had defied market expectations and left its cash rate steady at 3.85%. Trump has begun telling trade partners from powerhouse suppliers like Japan and South Korea to minor players that sharply higher US tariffs will start on the 1st of August. But he later said that he was open to extensions if countries made proposals. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 529. Botswana 13.13. Kenya 128 shilling 455, and Zambia 24 kwacha 19. The BRICS countries, Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5 real 44. Russia 78 rubles 52. India 85 rupees 78. China 7 yuan 17. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 17 rand 74. $1 is trading at 73 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. A look at commodities markets now. Gold is trading at $1,370. Platinum is at $69.36 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabiso Lohoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Zochitika ndi madaphiri kamlondola wazochitika pena paliponse.
Nduna wa zamalonda ku Malawi waletsa kampani yopanga shuga ya Ilovo yomwe ndi nthambi ya Ilovo Sugar Group Limited kuti isiye kutumiza shuga ku maiko akunja. Malingana ndi nduna ya zamalonda Vitumbuko Mumba, izi zithandiza kuti shuga yemwe yakusowa pa msika azipezeka. Ndiye pano ndili ndi George Muhangu amene ali mu mzinda wa Blantyre mu dziko la Malawi. Chimene chikupangitsa kuti shuga azisowa ndi chani?
Chomwe chikupangitsa kuti shuga azisowa ndichonena kuti panopo ili ngati off season ya makampani a Ilovo Sugar Malawi, kunena kuti sakutha kupanga shugayi okwanira chifukwa akukolola. Ndiye akamaliza kukolola pameneno atayambeno sopano kugaya shugayi kuti azipezeka. Chinanso ndichonena kuti ma distributors amene akumakagula shuga kaya ndi ku Ilovo kaya ndi kusalima shuga akumagulisa ku maiko akunja ngati Zambia, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Mozambique.
Zochitika ndi madaphiri lolemba mpaka lachisanu pa nthawi ya 7 koloko kufikira 8 koloko madzulo pa Channel Africa.
From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
South Africa's agricultural exports, particularly fresh produce, could face a significant blow as a 31% import tariff has been imposed by the United States and is set to take effect on the 1st of August. Now, the new duty forms part of an executive order that was signed earlier this year by former US President Donald Trump, which also expected to affect several other African economies. Now, this development comes at a critical time with the future of the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, which is a trade framework that has benefited South African industries like agriculture, steel and textiles since 2000, now uncertain. Now, many analysts say that this signals an urgent need for South Africa to rethink and diversify its export strategy amid shifting global trade dynamics. To unpack what this could mean for local producers, exporters, as well as consumers, so we're now joined on the line by Wandile Sihlobo, who's the Chief Economist at the Agricultural Business Chamber of South Africa, AGBIZ. Wandile, always good to talk to you. Thanks so much indeed for joining us on the program.
Thanks for having me on, Peter.
So let's start with this massive headline. What does a 31% tariff from US actually mean in practical terms for South Africa's fresh produce and broader agricultural export sector?
So, Peter, I think the first thing on framing for is the fact that the US is an important market for South Africa. We export products of about $13.7 billion a year. If you look at how big the US in that, it's about 4%, $500 million in monetary terms in there. And as you rightly put it, it's largely citrus, nuts, table grapes, wine, and the others. Now then, with the possible 31% duty, it does mean that the competitiveness of our products in the US market gets to be affected. And of course, it matters a lot also what our competitors like Chile and the others are facing. So far, we know they face reasonably lower duties on that. So it really disadvantages South Africa in that market. That's the broad impact at which we look at, because the penetration of the South African products will be limited if we get to face higher duties. The key thing then is about how do we get out of that and make sure that we continue to benefit on the lower duties? And I think that's where the groundwork has to be from now on.
All right. I guess where there is competition, that's one story. Are there products that are peculiar to South Africa or superior in South Africa that may force the Americans to think of this through? Because local buyers will be saying, listen, we can only get this in South Africa, or the best product is from South Africa. It's now costing us an arm and a leg.
I would say the whole basket of the products in agriculture that South Africa sends to the US is really the superior stuff. You think about the nuts, you think about the citrus and the table grape. But I would say on the macadamia nuts, it's one of those products where in the US, except a few producers in Hawaii, they really don't have a lot to go around. They must look into South Africa for these. But the challenge with the tariffs is that they add a tax to the American consumer. So ultimately, even if the importers there would bring the product, it ends up depending as to whether then the normal consumer in America is willing to pay to get your products, which will be priced at a fairly higher level as a result of that tax that has been added there. That's the bigger challenge then that we face. And I hope that we could be able to find a better terms with the US so that the products can still access the American market at a much more fairer and competitive terms. Because the reality is this, Peter, South Africa doesn't have an average tariff of over 30% as the US says. The average tariff that South Africa imposes to the world is at 7.6%. It's what we call the most favored nation tariff. So the idea then that these are reciprocal, they are coming into South Africa, is something that I don't think it's well founded on what's going on here.
Might President Trump face some pushback from American manufacturers that use our exports as inputs for their processes?
I would hope that, Peter, that's the conversation that in the US they will have in the coming days and months as to how they reconfigure, as well as the importance of some of these products. Because yes, it's important for us exporting, but there are other businesses in the US that depend on having these products in the manufacturing of a range of food products in there. So I would hope that they will try to have this conversation, but so that at least the terms of trade in the coming months improve from where we are. And I would say that certainly at the 10% duties that we're all facing, which placed us in a similar condition as our competitors in Chile and the other areas, we were able at least to compete fairly, especially at the peak of our citrus exports period, which is in May and June.
Do you think he'll follow through? I mean, he's delayed these tariffs already, and there must be a reason for that. That reason hasn't gone away, I'm guessing.
I'm hesitant to sort of like predict on what will happen in the White House, Peter, as you can imagine. My very hope is that the case that South Africa makes, which will follow on the inputs that were made in Luanda last week, can then be something that will be taken into account. And of course, it is on us and our South African authorities to also have a look at what the U.S. authorities would be requesting out of South Africa, and hopefully then we are able to strike a better deal. And of course, Peter, I'm talking about this as a South African, but we must remember that as a country, we negotiate much of what has to do with trade with the SACU countries, Eswatini, Lesotho, Botswana, and the others. And some of them, like Lesotho, tends to face even higher tariffs than South Africa. So it's really a regional conversation as to how can we constructively be able to engage so that the terms of trade improve from the current friction that we currently are facing.
Talking about the region, where does this all fit in with AGOA? Is this a separate conversation altogether? What are the implications for those countries on the AGOA system right now?
The benefits of AGOA technically, Peter, has been nullified. Yes, officially, AGOA is an act of Congress. We will know more about what happens in September when it's an official renewal process. But AGOA ensured that we have a duty-free access to the U.S. for a range of products as a region. Now, with these duties in place, technically, that has been nullified.
Do we really understand what Trump's thinking is? I mean, every week he comes up with something new. At the moment, he's on this BRICS train as well now, that anyone who supports anything that the BRICS nations say, we're going to push more tariffs on them. What is really behind, or do we know what's really behind this tariff talk?
Peter, I'm hesitant to sort of speculate on what the U.S. president thinks about these things. Suffice to say that the feeling that we are all getting is that the U.S. could still do more with its trading partners. And of course, they worry about the deficit as they've officially communicated on that. The conversation around BRICS, we've all noted the statements, but my sense is that there shouldn't be much of the worries about BRICS, because I myself, as a South African, I actually find our engagement with BRICS unsatisfactory in a sense that it is more still a political grouping. There is no solid economic ambition. My wish is that BRICS can actually have an economic ambition where there is some form of a trade agreement within these countries, or they do much more commerce together. Because if you look at the BRICS intra-trade, it remains fairly low. And without that strong and a solid economic ambition in this grouping, I don't see it gaining much traction for the longer term. So I have those dissatisfaction when I'm looking at the grouping, but broadly looking at it from what the White House has communicated, one can only speculate on about what their views are on that.
All right. So what we saw with the Ukraine-Russia situation is that a lot of countries had to rethink all the things that they took for granted before, look for new markets, new sources for products. Is this an opportunity for African nations to re-look at the current setup in terms of where we export to, where our markets are, who we depend on, and perhaps set us up better going forward?
Look, my thinking is that we cannot just replace the U.S. The U.S. remains vital, which is why the very wish for many of us in South Africa is not to replace America with China or anything, is to improve relations with the U.S. As that is going, the diversification and looking for other markets is something that should automatically continue. So we must invest energy on opening up as many export markets as we can, because we are at a step where we are thinking about boosting production. Either you are thinking about agriculture or auto industry or mining, depending on what African country you are looking at. My sense is that we need to ensure that we are well integrated with a number of economies, while at the same time improving relations with the US, because it remains an important global market, and you want to be part and parcel wholesale of that big American market. But at the same time, you want to spread your risk and ensure that you have better access to other markets so that the business people in whatever African country, they then have a variety of choosing which country they should trade more or with. But if you are a government, your job is really to open up as much of the world to your entrepreneurs and businesses so that they have a choice on trade.
Okay, Wandile, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much indeed for giving us some insights on that. And let's hope that sanity prevails. That maybe Donald Trump decides this president thing isn't for me and he does something else. That's Wandile Sihlobo, who's one of our regular commentators, particularly on the agricultural space. It is 8:56 Central Africa time. And what does that mean, Asanda?
It means we're about to leave as Africa Rise and Shine, and On the Move is about to enter the chat. And Palesa is joining us to let us know what to expect on today's edition. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
Sharp.
All right, today on The Move, in the second hour, we go in the cubicle. That's our workplace feature. And we're asking the question, why are African graduates still struggling to find jobs despite having degrees? Because it seems like more and more university students or Africans are earning university degrees, but they're finding it even harder to be employed. So we're going into the issue of unemployed graduates in the second hour. And then we move on into our final hour. And it seems like every time we speak about money, we speak about how to save it, how to invest it, how to make more. But what about thanking ourselves? I mean, what about fun, right? So we're going to be speaking about fun money and how you can build a fun money budget so you can still feel joyful with your money.
The graduates thing, unfortunately, I think it's that we are producing degrees and graduates that are not relevant for the marketplace that we're in now.
Right.
And universities take an age to change their curriculums when they should be taking months now. So unfortunately, we should have a degree program already on things like AI.
Yes.
But we're still doing very old things.
Like IT.
And basic things. And, you know, there's some degrees that are nice to study, but you're not going to get rich or get a job from them. And I think about maybe French literature in South Africa.
Yeah.
That's not going to help you.
No,
You know what I mean?
Also, universities seem to care more about the money coming in and not really the relevance of the degrees that they provide the students, right?
Yeah. So I get it. And unfortunately, also, the economy is not growing as fast as the number of people that are getting born. And so there's always going to be a deficit if your population growth is slower than your economic growth. And that's the other big factor.
Are you having fun with your money?
You need to start by spoiling yourself.
I don't have money.
But whatever you earn, do you spoil yourself? Like, do you intentionally say, I work hard for this money.
Yeah.
I know I have a lot of responsibilities, but I'm the one that actually has to do all these things. And I need
also
to feel
spoiling
good.
yourself doesn't mean doing something lavish.
Yes.
Right,
It can be as small
Yes.
as I'm taking myself out for seafood lunch.
No, you're right. To be honest, I find that I spend it. My fun is spending it on other people.
Yeah.
I tend to buy for other people, my families, and I get joy from that actually more than.
Well, I'll be with you on payday then, Peter, since you like to have fun by spoiling other people. I'm there in the queue.
All right. Well, all the best for the show, and I hope you guys enjoy it. And do stay with us on Channel Africa. From the Rise and Shine team, my name is Asanda Beda.
I'm Peter Ndoro. Zikomo Kwambiri. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a good day.
Goodbye.